Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 316, Batman Earth 1. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. You say it's your birthday? Well, it's my birthday too, and boy does that scare me. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh? For a second there, I thought you were going to go into some Beatles there.
I was going to, but that's always your shtick. I don't want to take that from you. So this episode, we're talking about Batman Earth 1, a big, huge story in the graphic. I love these original graphic novels, so it's great that we have the opportunity periodically to kind of do one in depth like this, because I think they're really special stories. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, this is the beginning of the month, which means it's time to see all of the amazing deals on pre-orders you're going to get from DCBService.com. So make sure to head on over to their website and see what the deals are. They're going to be coming out this week. Over at InStockTrades.com, they are doing a second 60% off sale on select DC trades and hardcovers. So make sure to head on over to InStockTrades.com and save lots of money on those hardcovers and trades that you've been wanting to stock up on. Also, they're starting to feature these new 52 hardcovers and graphic novels, and the one that really stands out for me is Superman Action Comics Volume 1. It's regularly $24.99, 50% off only $12.50, and it collects the first 8 issues of Superman's story. You know, this is a big change for Superman, and some of you may have missed it. Maybe you're not a regular Superman reader, and it's a great chance to check out what Grant Morrison was doing in those 5 years that kick off the new 52. So you're going to want to check that out. And I want to thank InStockTrades.com and DCBService.com for supporting our show. Oh, Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth in the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of Batman Earth 1. So if you haven't read the book, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk Batman.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Jim, our first conversation today, we're going to talk about the mega epic Batman Earth 1. Written by Jeff Johns, pencils by Gary Frank, inks by Jonathan Sabal, color by Brad Anderson, lettered by Rob Lay. The editor is Eddie Berganza, assistant editor is Darren Shan. Robin Brosterman is the design director on books, and Curtis King Jr. is the publication design. And I wanted to note those because these are special offerings, these original hardcovers that DC does. I absolutely adore these. And this was everything that I hoped it would be. Last year, you and I had an opportunity to talk about Superman Earth 1, and I really enjoyed that experience. I think it was great because you walked in knowing this is a different Earth, it's a brand new start, they're not taking current continuity and reworking it, it's just a fresh, clean slate that's separate from everything else. I've always liked this about DC. This, to me, is exactly what the Elseworlds concept was all about. It was creators being able to take the concepts of these big characters and do their own little spin on them. And this, for me, longtime Batman fan, I thought was such a fresh, incredibly fun take on Batman. I really dug it. What about you, though? What was your take on it?
Well, it's Jeff Johns, so going into it, you knew it was going to be good. Yeah, it was just what level of good are we going to deal with? And I got to tell you, he knocked it out of the park for me. It's funny because you're saying how this was just a fresh, fun, version. And it had, again, just some elements of realism to them that I like seeing in my comics. And it's odd to say that I like seeing realism in a universe that has a flying Kryptonian and that has a guy dressed up in a bat costume who does things that probably defy modern laws of physics, but there's still you felt like, okay, this is possible. This is something that could actually happen. And I like seeing this Batman who has to work the kinks out of the system. He's not the Batman of our universe who's prepared for everything. This is just a regular guy who is dealing with some major issues and trying to do what he thinks is right. And I liked that. And I liked the fact that I got that feeling from him.
What I really like about this, and I've used this a lot over the last year, is getting the concept of the characters to their core. I think what the problem is, sometimes you can write a story and you forget who the character's supposed to be, what makes that character essentially interesting and cool. And when you leave that out, the character's unrecognizable. In this case, it has all the core elements that make Batman work. It's that guilt over the parent's death. It's this need for justice, this need for vengeance, this need to make this horrid place into something better. This need to create hope, or to, be a part of that. And it's something I love that through this, we see a build to that. We see a very inexperienced person who is just really trying to get vengeance for the death of his parents, seeing the bigger picture of the place where he lives and seeing a new role for himself in all of that. That was the really strong treat of this story. We also see the character development, though, of not just him, but his entire supporting cast. Changes to Alfred and Alfred's growth, but yet it still felt like Alfred. Jim Gordon, same thing. It's a very different world. His backstory's different, yet at his core, it's still Jim Gordon, and we see him become more of the Jim Gordon we're used to by the end of the story. Harvey Bullock. I was like, oh, they're doing this with Harvey? By the time I was done, I'm like, oh my God, what a cool way to handle this. You get Harvey Bullock that you would expect, but you need to see his journey before it gets there. But then you do fresh villains like Birthday Boy. I don't recall Birthday Boy ever being a Batman villain. If it was, it was a more of a throwaway villain. The use of that character in this, what a creep factor that is. I'm afraid of birthday cakes now.
Well, just make a wish and you'll be okay.
Just don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Now, is it me, or did you think maybe by the end, no, you need to scream about the wish? Because
I honestly wonder what would have happened if someone would have said, I'd wish you'd go away. You can't tell me your wish. I wonder if that would throw him for such a loop that, you would be able to, I can't see him giving you a pass, but who knows? I wanted to see what would happen.
I'm with you. I'm a big fan of Gary Frank's work. I really got into his stuff over at Top Cow when he was doing some work with JMS. And it's great to see him here on this book. I've loved his Hulk work over at Marvel, loved the work he's done for DC. These original projects, I think, are really great for writers and artists to shine in a more expansive way and to tell a story in a way that I like the feeling that these projects just are worked on until they're done. And I don't think it's something that you can do in a monthly book. I think I'm endlessly amazed by what creators do in 30 days with a regular comic title. And I know they've got to make sacrifices in order to make all of that happen. I love the monthly book. I love the monthly format. What's great about this is it's something a little bit different. It's a fresh offering. It just shows another thing that comics can do. Comics, to me, are this wide-open medium where you can do these weekly digital offerings they're doing now. You can do these monthly offerings. You can do these limited series. And then you can do these big, huge graphic novels that really just tell a cinematic-like story. That's what this did. This whole silent sequence with him running along the rooftops, this is Batman to me. I love this kind of stuff. Yes, it's a very green Batman, and we're seeing him try new things out, test new things out. He's so driven, though, that in the midst of these things going horribly wrong, like the grappling hook, the one thing that I think has become very symbolic to Batman these days is that he's going to throw a grapple eventually. Because I grew up with the Batman having the batarang on the end of the rope and throwing the batarang. The grappling hook, I think, has been just a great modern addition to the Batman mythos and something we all expect. I love that it didn't work. And he has to improvise. He has to adapt, taking huge risks. This is the guy who has information, that he's this Weaver, has information about the death of his parents. Batman is willing to risk his life to catch this guy. I love that he misses the rooftop. This isn't a guy who is accustomed to making those jumps. This isn't a guy who's done that, to the point where he's pulling air conditioners down on himself on the way down. I love the fine details of seeing things that would slowly break his fall, like the clotheslines and such along the way, but also seeing that this was just not clean, not pretty. I like that in Batman Begins. When he first met Gordon, came up behind him and he didn't quite have the cowl yet. Now there are two, that whole thing. And he got up on the roof and started running away. And he jumped to the fire escape. And that was not clean. This is the same thing for me. It's a Batman who's building himself. I love that aspect of this.
Oh God, yeah, it adds to what I said about the realism to it. Because this was some, you're talking about artwork. This was just the way the layout, just the color, and this is a full art team, not just pencils and inks.
Oh, sure.
We're talking coloring, we're talking everything, just how it laid out. And I was like, dang, this is really cool, because that whole silence that you were talking about. But when he pulled out the rope gun, I love the little extra details where we're actually seeing the spool and we're seeing the CO2 canisters that power it, because it's always the Batman grappling gun. I know Mythbusters have done it, various other people, they've tried to build a device like a portable handheld Batman grappling gun, and I don't think anyone's ever been able to physically create it. And I loved seeing this version, like, oh, that's kind of neat that it kind of is showing add a little bit more to it, saying this is how it would work, yada yada. And then it fails, and it was an epic fail with the spool kicking out. I was just like, I laughed. I literally was like, this is outstanding. And when he goes to make the big jump, you're expecting him to make it. No, he misses it. Then crunch, and just the fall. I was dying. I was literally, just laughing out loud throughout these moments. But it wasn't like laughing out loud that it's a silly story. It was laughing out loud that I was like, yes, I love this kind of stuff with Batman. This is a really neat moment this is what would happen if Jim was Batman. I would miss the jump. I would barely hit a thing. I would land and hit the ground and go, oh, ow, that hurt. This is what would happen if I put on the cowl. And I loved seeing that. I loved getting that kind of that feel for it.
I love with the fire escape, then when Weaver's climbing it, that the bolts broke off. Little tiny things like that, because I don't have a major fear of heights. We were just at the Getty Center in California. I went to a buddy of mine's wedding. And you have to take a tram up to get to that thing. And it's gorgeous architecture and everything, but there's a lot of spots where you're like by a railing and looking over. And when you hit that point, I was actually thinking of this issue. I'm like sitting here, I know I'm going to be the guy where I'm going to lean on that thing and the bolts are going to break or something. That's my only fear that I get with heights and everything. It's whatever the structure is that's holding you. If it's got some form of screws or bolts or things like that are holding it in place, that those are finally going to give, and it's going to be when I'm holding it. But that was the reality of this thing. This is old Gotham. Not everything is kept up to date. He's climbing all the way up on this thing. It gives out on him, and Weaver just barely makes it too. I love that intensity. I think all of this is important to note, that you're creating a cinematic sequence where you can almost, you talk about how you hear music in the background.
Yeah. Oh,
you can just dun, 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 like that kind of intense action sound that's playing along with this, because it's one nonstop moment after another. I also love, and this is something that I really pay attention to, the fine details in the craftsmanship. Like when he's reaching for that, you can see in the roof, like the little grooves and cracks. And then as he's falling down in the window, you see the woman putting the dinner up on the table. Those are fine details that I really appreciate, even from looking at all the garbage around Bruce. When he hit the ground, to the gutter, to the grate. That's all stuff that takes an artist's time to put together. And that's stuff that sometimes you need to sacrifice, those little fine details. I know that artists in comics constantly have to make decisions about your establishing panels and then the panels afterwards that continue the action. I really appreciated the amount of fine details at crafting an environment that were put into these initial pages, because to me it made Gotham feel like it was coming to life. It set a tone for what this Gotham is like, and those were things that I really, really enjoy. Even from the restaurant where you're seeing that in the background where the guy's getting ripped off, that everything that Batman's doing to chase Weaver, he isn't at the point yet where he is going for stopping crime. He's just after the killer of his parents. So he lets those criminals go and closes his eyes to that injustice because he isn't at that place yet. That was something that I thought was a neat little detail. This isn't. We're used to the Batman who's got that mission in place. He doesn't have that mission.
Yeah. Oh God, that was another. And the thing I liked about that was it gives you the kind of moment, because you're like, wait, what's going on? But you do quickly learn exactly what's going on, where he's at, why he didn't stop to help the people. But you do still see a kinder, you still see a good guy there when he runs into the homeless person and they're like, please, I'm just trying to stay warm. Reaches in and gives her a couple bucks and, actually does, he's not completely indifferent to society. It's just he has his mission, and his mission isn't crime. It is finding his parents. And it's the Batman as we know it isn't around yet, isn't out there, isn't, up there yet. Right now it's about, he wears the cowl to protect the identity of the people he knows, of his family, of his friends. It's not about, being Batman. And I think that is something, as the story evolves, as the story goes through, you start getting that. And it's the little bit here, it's that building on, the past parts of the story that, it gives us our Batman. It gives us, a Batman. It gives us the true Batman. And it's the true Batman for this world. And I think that is a neat thing, because I kept saying this Batman and our Batman. And by the end of the book, I was like, it's not this or ours. This is the Batman for this world. This is the Batman for this universe. It's not a comparison to our Batman that we're used to. You can't look at that. You got to look at who is he? And this is the building of the Batman. And I like that. I liked getting that feel and that sense of it. It's not just about, he witnessed his parents' murder. There's now going beyond the seeking justice for his parents. It's now about seeking justice for Gotham.
And you're putting that exactly the way I see it. I love that when he closed his eyes there, that's something that he internalized and it will stick with him. He made the choice to let those criminals run there. And that injustice is something that bothered him and it will stick with him. It slowly began the process of changing him into the Batman that we're used to, the Batman that we love. In this world, a Batman who will become very familiar to us of what a tried and true Batman should be, our Bruce Wayne. And that moment with the lady, I agree with you 100%, also is part of the building blocks. It's all about building Batman. I love the attention to detail. This is also a Batman. Why would he have a Batmobile? He's not fighting that kind of mission. The cape and the cowl is, like you said, about protecting his identity. He's driving a regular vehicle, and that's something that would be hidden in an alley so people wouldn't see him there. I love that was his vehicle in the background when he's talking to that lady, and he was just looking to get back to it and to escape. The fine detail of the lighter being his dad's lighter was something that, that picture drew him immediately to, okay, Weaver's job change, the lighter, clues. We're seeing the beginning of a detective. He's chasing down his parents' murderers, something that Gotham Police has dropped. And in the story, we learn that it's because of the amount of corruption in Gotham that was dropped. The mayor has an intense amount of power. I love that the mayor turns out to be Cobblepot. That was something that, to me, fits traditionally what I see in Gotham.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, it's funny because, the story took classic elements of Batman and changed them and tweaked them. But you said it earlier, they didn't lose the core of who they are. No. And I'm one of those guys that does, I do have some issues sometimes with letting some stuff go, but for some reason when we get into Earth 1, I'm so cool with them saying, hey, have fun with it, change it around. The new Alfred, I really like I'm calling him the Sam Elliott Alfred, to be honest with you, because every time I read this book, Sam Elliott's voice is ringing through my head for Alfred. Yeah. And I can't get it out. It's partially because he doesn't look, there's some physical similarities, but just that style, that gruffness, that strength of character, that just who he is. It's not, I don't see this as the proper British gentleman Alfred who had, spy/acting questionable background. This is somebody who's, gotten his hands dirty, who's been a little nasty, who's been a little bit on the tough side, who's maybe crossed a line or two. And I was like, that's kind of neat. I like from the very opening, the very introduction of him, we see a completely different person. We see him approaching the job, approaching the task at hand different. But in the end, he is still that Alfred. He's still that Alfred who is Bruce's support structure, who is the person who is Bruce's confidant, who will eventually help the Batman really come out.
I love the fine details of when Alfred shows up and he's getting out of the vehicle, the taxi driver saying things like, "You need some help getting out, pal," and establishing that Alfred's got something wrong with him. I don't. In that moment, you don't really realize what the cane is for. But also, this builds to, that he has this bond with Thomas Wayne. Thomas Wayne got him walking again. Thomas Wayne has been in these dark places with Alfred. I love that we never 100% see what those dark places have been for the two of them. They give us just enough that these are secrets and demons that the two of them would not want to share with everyone else and don't even want to recollect with each other. But it's something that still haunts Alfred, still haunts Thomas. They've responded to it in different ways. And I think this has driven Thomas Wayne to be this public figure, to try and use money to make change in the world. He's reacted differently than Alfred would have, whereas Alfred's gone a little bit of a darker path. I like that kind of distinction between the two of them. It was something that I enjoyed.
Yeah, there was a lot of really cool non-verbal communication between the two of them, and that was something that you really appreciate the artwork for. Just, when they mention, Africa, there's that look in their eyes, and you can just your mind just starts running through what they could have done, and you start thinking, okay, was Thomas Wayne over there as some medical charity, help the sick and the injured of Africa, and Alfred was over there as a soldier, a mercenary, a hired gun, and I'm just, all these different stories start running through my head, and it all comes from that single look, that single panel of that, just that we don't want to go there. We don't want to mention it. We don't want to bring it up. It's like, what would be so horrible that this person wouldn't want to, that he's burying it, that he's, trying not to look beyond it. And I thought for me, that was something I was like really fascinated by. And I wanted to hear his story. And it's when you get a character first introduction and within a couple pages, you're already starting to think off the page. You're already starting to think, okay, what about this? Hey, what about this? And that for me is just the potential for some really cool and really great stuff.
I like that we didn't 100% know, though, because I felt like I was overhearing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, this was a genuine conversation they were having in public with all these people there, and they went as far with it as they would go in a situation where somebody could possibly overhear it. I also love that these two guys couldn't look more different. Their lives' paths couldn't be more different, yet there's a familiarity between them because of shared experience. And I think that's true of any friendship group. You might move on in life, you might head on in different directions. One person might have a more lucrative job than the other, or one person might have to wear suits to work while the other person would wear more street clothes just because of the nature of their job. But it's those shared experiences of your past that bond you together. I connected with the two of them on that because I've been very lucky, and you're in that group, with the amount of people that I've known from, my childhood and high school and things like that, who I'm still in touch with, who I'm still very good friends with. Yet we all have different careers. We've headed down different paths because of that. And we're going to have those distinctions of different viewpoints on politics, different viewpoints on life, different paths that we've gone in, different places we live. Different economic status. That stuff happens. It's natural with any particular group. I loved, though, that there was that comfort that was still felt there. And I think that's hard to achieve on a static page like this. And they did that. There's a comfort there between the two of them that I really quite enjoyed. That's established very quickly through the dialogue and the way that they're carrying themselves. The smiles between the two of them was something that, they're really glad to see each other. And that comes from an unspoken shared experience.
Oh, definite. And I like the fact that Alfred doesn't hold back, and it's very point out up front, just points out immediately, hey, you got a lot to lose, Tommy. You got a lot to lose here. And he immediately starts looking at the situation, and he's looking at it different than how Thomas is looking at it. He's looking for the threats, for the potential damages. And another cool facial expression was when Alfred's talking about the threats. You can see the look on Thomas's face. He never told his wife about it. He never said anything to her, and he's kind of got the, not now, come on, dude, she's right here. And Alfred doesn't stop and just keeps going because that's part of, you got to let it out there. You got to let everybody know that there is a potential threat when you're faced with this stuff. And I immediately, again, immediate connection with Alfred through that, because he is, being true to who he is. You can't hold back. You can't have the secrets. It's, makes security a lot harder if one person thinks everything's okay and the other one knows, hey, there's something seriously wrong here. If you're doing family security, all members of the family have to know, hey, we got potential real threats here. You have to actually, have the family members thinking, and looking at life a little bit differently. It can't just be the security force, because if it's just the security force doing it, the family could walk into a very obvious ambush and not have the sense to have their security team with them, which is what we saw.
I've read this book 4 times now, and really for the show, I could have read it twice and I'd been just fine. I read it 4 times out of enjoyment. I really wanted to go back and revisit this. I'm having a lot. I know I'm gonna read it again. It was actually just before we recorded. I read it for my 4th time because I really wanted to just go through and enjoy this. I read it on the plane when I was going to California. One of the things I really noticed when I was on the plane, because I went through a little slower on the plane and looked at the art. I loved in this mansion sequence the attention to detail on everything from the wallpaper to the stuff showing that this is a whole group of people getting together for a campaign. And you'll see campaign poll numbers. You will see balloons. You'll see banners. You'll see buttons. Just tiny little details there of things being crafted. People that are there for the fundraiser, to butlers and, people serving drinks and things like that, helping out. This would be a campaign thing that would need quite a few people to keep the ball rolling, to keep people entertained. You want people to open up their checkbook because that's how you're going to fund and finance this type of thing. I love seeing this side of Thomas Wayne, seeing him going for mayor, because it's not something we always see from Thomas Wayne, to see him in a political light like this. And I like this distinction. It was a good choice. You've still got the medical background that he was a doctor, but he's looking to be a leader of Gotham who can do some form of social change to make the world a better place, because he's seen the darkness. He's seen the horrors that Alfred has. And that's just something that he wants to do. It's clear he's a family man with family values. Bruce is a little bit spoiled. But I do think that's something that Bruce will go out of, because these are family members who are saying, hey, family night's important. I want to try and keep this world that we live in as normal for Bruce as possible. Alfred coming back and pointing out things. Normal? In this mansion with butlers, maids, and cooks? This isn't normal, Tommy. You don't know what normal is. Being a Wayne? You never have. Life's ugly outside this palace of yours. But Thomas come back and says, hey, I've been there with you. I know how ugly it can be. This is just my way of reacting to it. That was something that I thought was really great, because Alfred, in that moment, has to say, okay, I get it. We've both seen this darkness together. I like that Thomas Wayne called him on that. Yeah. That just because I've got this money and just because, I've worked hard to get where I'm at, and I've been through some of the things you've had. We know what it's like. We just choose to do it differently. I don't know in that moment that I'm not against Alfred. I wasn't against Tommy. I was again seeing the same thing I was talking about earlier. We've got a friendship group of very diverse people. I find each and every one of those people that we've grown up with to be very valid in their life choices and their direction and things like that. It's just different. But yet there's that common moment where you can say, hey, remember we did this. Hey, remember we did that. And that's going to be different from person to person that we talk to. Those experiences do connect you. And sometimes you need to remind those people that you're with that, hey, I'm still that same guy that went through those things with you. Respect me for my choices the way I respect you for yours. And that was a neat moment, because I think we've all been there on both sides of this discussion. Oh, yeah. And I think that's normal. It felt very rich and very real to me. And I think these are things you can't develop always in a monthly book. I think it's great when writers are able to do that. But I think when you've got an expanded story like this where all the pages are together, you have an opportunity to kind of spread this out and flesh this type of relationship out in a way that you might have to sacrifice a little bit in a monthly title.
It's neat that sequence, where they're getting ready for a movie night. It appealed to multiple facets of my personality. The security conscious guy was sitting here yelling at the page going, what are you doing, you idiot? Listen to Alfred. And then when, Thomas stood up to me, came back with the explanation, it completely clicked on me about, what I know about different politics and how every major political leader will tell you the same thing. They try to keep some semblance of normal for the children. They try to keep some, try to, just, it can't be normal. It'll never be normal, but try to give them something that they can hold on to, that one little piece. There's always this. There's always, one little portion that is true. Jacqueline Kennedy had this whole thing where she would take, Jack to the park. And one time they were there, a bunch of kids, were picking on him. And, well, the Secret Service was about to step in and save him. And she's like, no, he's, this is what kids do. This is kind of normal stuff. This isn't, terrorists about to assassinate him or some crazy thing. These are just kids being kids. Let this happen. And it was a neat, kind of little story that I one time heard. I was like, that's kind of cool that you have this moment. And this is, the White House dealings with it. Current President Obama with his children has, different situations where they're trying to, give the kids a semblance of a normal life. The Bush children have said, this is, it's weird living in the White House, but you kind of have these moments with your parents. And I loved seeing that play out here. And one, it does further the story, but two, there was just, again, it was just that neat, connection with stuff I've actually heard legitimate, real-life politicians say, that Thomas is saying the exact same things, and he's going along with it. I thought that was, really cool.
Yeah, that was something I enjoyed, too. Just seeing those little fine details. And even when they got to the theater, the idea that, Bruce is saying, let's go to the front row, and you see Mom and Dad reacting a little bit differently to that whole thing. This is her son. Mom's being a little indulgent. I'm not knocking mothers by saying that. I'm saying, there's usually, and sometimes it can be the dad that's more indulgent on that end. So it's not a sex thing on this. But you see that situation where, he's taking them all the way to the front row. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, Bruce, if you were sitting in the front row, last thing I want to do is sit with my head having to look at the ceiling in order to see the movie, you little turd.
I never understood that. I've seen a lot of people who run to the front row, who love the front row.
Right.
That hurts my neck.
Right.
That's always, even as a kid, I never wanted to do that. I'm like, let's go for the sweet spot right in the middle, kind of even divide, just so you're not looking too far up, you're not looking down. It's, nice comfort, viewability.
Yeah. Well, I love stadium seating where you've got the middle, where I'm with you. The sweet spot's in the middle somewhere like that. But I've got friends of mine that like to sit up really close. I got friends of mine that like to sit in the very last row. I don't necessarily. I'm usually the one that bends, but I'm usually the one that's grunting in the background, going, do we really have to be up in the front row? I saw Batman Begins in IMAX from the front row, and that wasn't done on purpose. It was we booked the seats online because you could do that in California where we went, and it was a theater. It was at a place called The Bridge. So we went to go see the movie, and we get there. We're right 5 minutes before the movie starts because we figure, what does it matter? You've got reserved seats. We show up, their computers were down. They're honoring the tickets, but you don't have your reserved seats. Needless to say, it's a packed house. So we get in there. The only two seats, first of all, are separate and in the front. So I'm looking up Batman's. It was an amazing experience, but I'm looking up Batman's nose. And I don't think they intended you to view the film that way. But I was connecting with this because of Bruce's experience. The lights go off. And here's a kid. He's a young kid who comes from means. And he's not a bad kid. He's just, there's times where things have been indulgent. And these are good parents who are trying to find some balance in his life. And they're going out for family night because they're recognizing that their kid needs that. They need that. And I think that connection is important. That's why I said earlier that Bruce is going through a phase. We all have gone through those phases. This is a family, though, because of their involvement with each other. Under normal circumstances, if life had continued for these two parents, Bruce would have turned out very well adjusted because this is a family that, in spite of everything that's going on, the running for mayor, all that, they're putting a family time in there for balance. I really enjoyed that because in that moment, I'm like, okay, you were talking about real world before, Jim. This is a real-world group of parents who are just trying to make it work. We're fortunate that we have many friends who do this. They make family time. They go out to the movies with their kids, or they're involved in some club or Boy Scouts or something with their kids, where they're doing this well-rounded thing to give their kids that, that sense of value that's important to them as individuals. And this is a kid that would have turned out well had this not happened. I love, though, that Bruce's moment of brattiness actually completely threw a twist on what was supposed to happen to the family. Yeah. They were going to die here regardless. If they had not followed Bruce out the exit and gone out the front, Cobblepot's men were waiting for them out there. This was a fluke happening by going out the back. Another person wound up killing the family. It just was a happy accident for Cobblepot that could have ended up saving. It's funny, Bruce's moment of weakness could have actually saved his family's life. That was a different twist on the Batman story, because it's usually Bruce's need to leave the circumstance that winds up getting the parents killed. This was very different.
See, here's the thing. I did see this a little differently as well. Whenever we see Bruce feeling guilty over the death of his parents in the previous versions, I'm like, yeah, okay, but there was always just a little ringing in the back of my head. Like, he didn't really cause it. If he'd sit down and rationally think about it, he was a kid, he was scared, they left the theater. Hey, it happens. You can't blame yourself. And with a little bit of therapy, he could have actually worked through it. With this version, I actually think Bruce is at fault. That's, if he had listened to his father and not run out, his parents would still be alive. I think he's 100% justified in blaming himself for his parents' death.
No, they wouldn't have been.
It's all on Bruce, 100%.
No, they wouldn't have been. Cobblepot's men were waiting out front. Cobblepot even said that. The killer that was out back was not Cobblepot's. The parents were dead regardless. Now, I agree with you that when Bruce went out the back, antagonizing that guy, hey, watch where you're going, kid, did cause that. So I'm not totally seeing this differently than you. Because when he says, I don't have to do anything you say, my parents are the richest people in Gotham, that moment antagonizes this guy, and that caused, I think it did cause the killing in that moment. You're that Wayne kid. But if Bruce had listened to his family and they'd gone out the front, they would have been dead anyway because of Cobblepot's men. This was
You do realize I'm joking, right?
Oh, no. No, but I'm actually in your joke. There actually is a reality to all this, though, because Bruce did antagonize this, because this is not somebody working for Cobblepot. So it's funny. Your joke actually is there's a reality to it.
I'm blaming a little kid for the death of his parents, dude.
Well, dude, wait.
I'm heartless. I admit it. I'm not that bad.
But, dude, look at this moment where he did antagonize the guy who wound up killing in this horrible place of Gotham. I'm not saying it was Bruce's fault. I'm saying he did antagonize this situation, and I think in this moment you can see why Bruce would be seeking the vengeance that he did. I think it's important. I know you were joking, but you've got to take into a certain point. This does play out heavily in why this kid is so driven specifically for vengeance. This is a distinction in the story, and it is where it veers off a little bit from what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Because in the ones you're talking about, like especially if you look at Batman Begins, when he tells Alfred that it was his fault, Alfred is justified in coming back to him and saying it wasn't you, it was the killer, it wasn't your fault. And Alfred's right. In this moment, you can argue that Bruce, no matter what anybody would say to him, Bruce is going to look back at this pivotal moment. I don't have to do anything you say. My parents are the richest people in Gotham. There's that part of him that's going to say, you can't take away the fact that I antagonize this guy.
Yeah.
This caused him to turn around and maybe cause this situation. Now, we don't know in this world what would have happened if Bruce hadn't said anything. Would this guy have done it anyway if he noticed the Wayne family when they came out? Maybe. If Bruce just came out and just kept running, whatever. Yeah. We don't know what would have happened if Bruce never ran out of the place. What would have happened when Thomas and Martha went out the front and Cobblepot's men were waiting for them? We don't know that either.
Well, I don't think Thomas would have gone out front. He was recognizing that this was a potential trap. And part of it, I think, was Alfred really wanting to come along. Alfred saying, hey, you got a lot to lose, Tommy. And just that kind of put that bug in his head. You look at that moment when the lights go down, Thomas is kind of going in combat mode. He's looking for assessing threats. And so when Bruce runs off, he's like, Bruce, stop. In my head, I was thinking he was thinking the bad guys were waiting out there for him. He wasn't thinking, he was going to look and assess the area. He was looking for potential issues. So I always I was joking when I said it's 100% Bruce's fault, because it's not. It's, the killer's at fault for killing the parents. But I do wonder what would have happened if Bruce hadn't run out, or if Bruce hadn't antagonized, or if Alfred had been present. Can you imagine if Alfred had been present, Bruce goes to run for the door, Alfred grabs him by the scruff of the neck and pulls him back? This whole story would be completely different. It wouldn't be called Batman. It'd be called the Waynes of Gotham, and it'd be about Thomas Wayne being, mayor, and who knows, maybe going on to what other political endeavors, and everyone would live happily ever after. Not a good Batman story, but would have been a definitely interesting tale to tell.
Alfred being there, I think, would have made the pivotal difference. If you look at Thomas's dialogue, though, I think Thomas would have gone out the front. Because he's saying, it's okay, let's just get back to the car, Martha. He was, to me, looking at, let's get out of this place. That would have led him up front where it would have happened to him, I think. Or who knows if they would have gone out the exit in the back and didn't face that killer, if Cobblepot's men would have gotten them anyway. And I don't really mean that it's Bruce's fault. I'm more painting a picture to how Bruce would see that it would be his fault.
Oh, yeah.
It was funny when you were joking about that part. I was thinking, well, no, there's really some reality to this on what would lead, because this is a story of vengeance for this kid. And this scenario right here, you see a kid who made a choice. And when I say bratty, I think we all have a bratty side. We all have those moments where we're kind of thinking about ourselves and what we want. Hopefully as we get older, we start to drop some of that. And I think that comes from when you have good parents and good people surrounding you. They help you kind of craft yourself and balance yourself out to think of not just your needs, but the needs of other people as well. This is a young kid who, comes from privilege, who, has parents who fortunately are really trying to put that time in with him, and unfortunately they didn't have the time to do it. I loved this whole scenario because I felt like I got to know this family. And I think this is, again, a testament to being able to do this in graphic novel form. Sometimes you can put an extra page in here or there, extra panels in here or there, that a writer, and I love monthly books. I'm not knocking them. What ends up happening with a monthly book, you've got 22 pages, and you've got to make sure that you pace it a certain way so you don't lose the reader's interest in that 30 days. You want to make sure there's a certain amount of character development, a certain amount of action, a certain amount of a mixture of moments that will keep people excited while at the same time getting to know the characters. So your storytelling is just going to be different. I love with the graphic novel, and I think it shows the creativity of comic book talent. They can assess the medium they're working in and craft a story that goes to the biggest advantage of the medium they're working in. When you see a writer have an opportunity to do a graphic novel, their mentality is going to just be a little different. And the same thing with the art team. Their mentality on the pacing of the story, the build to certain elements of the action in the story is going to be a little bit different. I felt like we got to know the family in a way where we got to see a balance between what makes Bruce a sweet kid and what makes Bruce, a kid from privilege who, is a little bit more me, and seeing some parents who are really trying hard to raise their kid the right way. I thought that was really engaging because Bruce really felt like a kid in this. And I liked that because I remember myself as a kid. I would be the kid that would be, saying, oh, come on, let's go to another theater, something like that. I was that kind of kid, especially if it was like a superhero movie. Zorro was a great example. I love characters like that. I'd be like sitting there begging, and I got to be honest, my mom is a sweetheart and a half. My mom would have been the one saying, let's go. My dad would have been like, let's get home. We can go do this another night, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And, there's a definite distinction there. And, I know with other families it'll be reversed and all that, but I connected with the real build of family in this. And I think that's something that's really cool.
Yeah. And it's, it's weird when you look at a death scene and you look at something horrific. And you can actually see the artwork, and you can see the beauty behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And I hate saying, hey, I actually dug the death scene, because it's a bad thing, Parents are dead, and poor kids scarred for life. You feel bad for them in the real world. But just on this paper format, man, this was just some really, really beautiful stuff that, usage of shadows. You get to see the horror on Bruce's face, and then the flash of light from the different gunshots, and then it lead to the darker panels with the heavy reds coming in from the police lights, as just again the rain pouring and just the darkness that's in Bruce's eyes. It's the life, the little kid, that friendly fun. Hey, let's go see another movie is gone. It's been replaced with darkness. It's been replaced with vengeance. And I was sitting there and I'm reading this thing as it's going. The Batman theme is just pumping through your head, like da 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 da, as this is all building. And it went from that really moments of the kid being a spoiled brat to boom, this gritty version of beautiful death and carnage that I was just like, wow. This is awesome.
I loved the use of the black panels in between.
Yes.
I thought that was a really cool, just on that page where, the police had shown up on the scene. The death had already happened. It's the aftermath of all this. We see there the establishing that Weaver was on the scene first. It's the Waynes. Did the kids see what happened? All of these things that, would naturally be asked, but also would, there's that other twist. They're also being asked because of the need to cover certain things up. That was really cool. I really enjoyed that aspect of all this, too, how if you read it a second time and more, you're going to see, with all the reveals, the layers of how everything was played out.
Yeah.
That's a really cool moment in a graphic novel as well, when you get to see those opportunities. I love that when we got to know his parents and those sequences with Alfred early on, and then, the whole importance of the family trip, that we get to see, you're right, we get to see some really bratty moments with Bruce, but we also get to see why, towards the end of the book, there would be that heart of compassion that would hand the lady in the beginning the $20 or whatever he handed her money-wise. It's because she needed money because she was cold. Then would feel this need to continue on as Batman to fight the social injustice in Gotham. I think that was something that was really cool, that you see this establishment. This is a kid who did have some good values. He was raised with good values. He really, deep down at his core, is a good kid. Horrible things happen to him. And that was something that I think is really important, because you've got to have a likability to your main character. Even though, you don't want to just rely on the fact that, hey, he was Batman, we should all love him because he's Batman. That shouldn't be enough. It should be something more to it than that. And this story, I thought, did this really well.
It's the depth of the character, depth of the man behind the cowl. The cowl is a cool character, but if there's nothing underneath it, then you're just getting, okay, bam, bam, done. You need to have that, you need to have Bruce Wayne. You need to have those stories. You need to have those connections. You need to have your Alfreds. You need to have your Gordons. And this is, again, a great exploration, a great introductory story that doesn't lose itself in introducing the characters. We get this neat Batman story while they're telling us his origins, while they're telling us the beginnings. And you have to have the nice blend of the combinations of the action and story development, character development, and some cool moments. You got to have that, that meshing together. And I really dig that, especially with Alfred's, the guardianship of Alfred being named the Guardian. That, again, was a really cool moment of Alfred. He first gets there. He's sitting there talking with the cops. He immediately wants to start looking for the killer. He's in Alfred action, gonna kick some butt mode. He's not Alfred, the butler of the Wayne family. No, he's Tommy's friend who wants some justice for his buddy. And just that, I'm named the Guardian. What are you talking about? I don't have kids. What are you, nuts? And I'd love just seeing him thrown on his ear, just completely twisted and discombobulated throughout all of that. That, again, that was a really cool moment.
Now, here's the thing. I like that they brought in the fact that he has a daughter. So we established here, this is a guy who, through circumstances of life, has kind of walked away from those responsibilities as well. And that was something that I really enjoyed in this, was seeing that distinction with Alfred, where he's like, I'm not the guy to raise this kid. I'm not a parent. I parented a child. I'm not a parent. There's a difference between the two. I love that distinction. A lot of times when they do the Batman story, it's Alfred just took on the Wayne's child, and they don't really explore the fact of what that really means and the sheer, I don't want to say, burden's a strong word to say because, it throws a negative connotation, but it would be something somebody's saying at first. You're making a life-changing decision there to become the legal guardian of this person, to take them on and raise them. You're making a commitment that you can't walk away from. And if you do, could have devastating effects on the child. He has to look at the other option there where, he's put into foster care and stuff like that. And, it's like, can I do this to this kid? This is my friend Tommy's kid. And I think this is a true natural thing that anybody would go through in this circumstance. He's sitting there at the table just really weighing out oh my God, what do I do here? Do I take the easy way out and, put him into child services, foster care, that type of thing? Or, do I take on this role of, being a butler? I love that he called himself a butler, so he's not taking this kid who just lost his parent and saying, I'm your new dad.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting twist on the whole thing. I also loved the sense of progression in the story. Alfred's hair, for example. In the earlier parts of the book, you see Alfred's hair has some color to it, but it's already graying in certain areas. By the end, shaved head, still got the goatee, but everything's gray now. And yet we still know it's the same guy. That's a great use of artwork. That's a consistency in your artwork. When I didn't have to go back and go, okay, who is this guy now with the shaved head? We just know because it's well done artwork. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's when, artists do a character study. When we had Freddie Williams on, he was talking about how he will do, a study of a character beforehand. I know, a ton of artists do that. And I think, that extra work they put in to make character models to help themselves be more consistent with these characters, that extra oomph that they put in, it's something we as fans don't get to see a lot of. But they do that behind the scenes, and the payoff is moments like this, not taken out of the story at all. We know this is older Alfred. Bruce shows up on the scene after his first mission, and the talk happens. Before we go into that, there's one thing I would like to discuss. The costume. We haven't really discussed it all. How do you feel about the costume?
I like it. It's good.
I liked the tiny little distinctions. It's something that it's classic Batman, while at the same time it does feel New Earth, and I think that was important. I liked it feels more crafted from real world materials, versus this. I don't mind the suits. I shouldn't say I don't mind. I like the suits of armor. I like the current Batman's look, but that's a different Batman with a different, exposure. Wayne Enterprises. This is Wayne Medical Group. This guy doesn't have access to Nomex survival suits and stuff like that. So seeing him in more of a cloth fabric makes sense compared to our Batman on our Earth, where we're seeing him in more of a armored suit that we're used to, like in the film or something like that. I don't mind the distinction between the two. I actually quite like them because the storytelling matches the suit. The world matches the suit that he's wearing. I really like to tell you how much I like this version of the costume. In both the Arkham City game on the computer, or it's one of the game consoles as well, and the one that's on my iPad, one of the alternate costumes has been the Earth 1 costume. I liked it so much that I keep throwing him in it.
Oh, cool.
Because it's really cool.
Yeah, for me, again, with the Batman costumes, as long as it keeps within the standard, what I'm comfortable with, I don't really go too heavy into, oh, look at this, I don't know about, this is the Batman costume. And as long as from point A of the book to the point B of the book, it stays a consistency, I'm happy with it. Again, there was some functionality with it. There was some real world feel and physics to it. So I thought it was a good costume, and I'm actually looking forward to Volume 2 because there's going to be some modifications. Yeah. There's going to be some changes. Maybe we'll get more of the armor style. Maybe we'll get some more body armor because he got banged up pretty good. He's, throughout this, experience, he's been stabbed, shot, dropped off the side of a building. He's had a lot of nasty stuff happen to him, so I can see Alfred now tweaking it and saying, hey, we need to put some armor here, put some protective gear here. Hey, this is where you got stabbed. This is a primary, picking like the primary target areas that Bruce may need, some little bit of extra something there. I can see them putting that in there in Volume 2. Volume 1 right now, no. This is just, what he's doing. It's just the concealment of his identity. It's not about the long haul. It's not about the long-term battle or the war on crime. And this fits what he's doing and why he's doing it.
The funeral that Gordon's at, that's for his wife, right?
Yes, that's what I assumed.
Okay, because we see a much younger version of him. And I loved, again, that consistency. You see the younger version of him, that he's been through some dark places. And then Barbara shows up at the scene. And this is weighing on him to the point where you get the idea that he went into police work for all the right reasons, to make a difference. But the darkness of the world of Gotham has forced him to be a man that he didn't want to be. This cop on the take, this cop who's being greased, things like that. I had zero issue with that. If anything, I thought it was an interesting twist how you see this guy because of the fact that his wife was murdered. It adds a different sort of story to him, shows why he and Barbara are living together, shows that looking at his daughter as being his motivation to say, I will do anything I can to protect her. Kind of the cop on the take is his mask to protect his daughter. And it's a trap that he's fallen into that he somehow needs to justify to himself on a daily basis. I love that. Barbara Gordon in this, her sense of wonder, her sense of positive viewpoint on the world. I thought this was a great crafting of Barbara Gordon. This is kind of how I've always seen a young Barbara Gordon. The point where you could see this being the type of girl that would be, when you'd see Batman, would go, oh, yeah, that's cool. I like that about her. There's that sense of her being, raised with the right values, a good dad. This is a single dad who's trying to give her the right life, feels guilty when it couldn't be more different than the life that Bruce Wayne has had. Even with his family, when his family was alive, the two lives could not have been more different. And yet Barbara's really well adjusted, considering all that. Really independent. That's something I find a lot of strength in the character of Barbara Gordon when she's done right. And this is a great example of a young Barbara Gordon and seeing how she could become the Batgirl that we're currently even reading today. I think this is true to that Batgirl as well. It's cool.
Definitely. And, when they first did that whole introduction on Gordon, a couple of stuff that I really, really liked was the background conversation of Gordon in the police station. We got this parent looking for their lost 15-year-old girl. Yeah. And one, it's a nice tie-in to the future part of the story. But two, it really does show that Gotham needs the Bat. If a missing 15-year-old girl doesn't warrant excitement from the police, add to the fact that there's a possible serial killer, some crazy serial killer out there who's leaving candles on the scene, and you don't see the cops jumping. You don't see a special crimes unit being launched. You don't see all this stuff that, them really going hard and heavy into it. It really shows just the level that Gotham itself has fallen. And it's background stuff. It's, not focused, on Jim Gordon. It's just in the side, it's that little extra stuff that I really, really like seeing. And I was like, damn, that's kind of cool that, a little extra storytelling in the background. And that's always makes things kind of neat.
I love that the police station isn't safe to him. This is the last time you come here. And I know part of that's her journey to get to the police station, but also he feels now that she's inside. This is the last time you come here. I don't think he feels she's safe in there because it's a reminder to those around him. If there's ever a need to get at him, the way to do it is through Barbara. He doesn't want the constant reminder to all them that Barbara's in the picture, because that's something that can be used against him. I love that there was a multiple layered way of taking a look at Gordon's reaction to her being there. Not only that the city isn't safe, but that the police department isn't safe, because you can't trust anybody on that force.
You know what? That's something that I got from multiple read-throughs. Like the Jim Gordon at his wife's funeral didn't realize what that was until later when you find out everything that happened. Gordon being so protective of Barbara. Again, something you don't really see all the pieces until you know the whole story. So it's the whole Jim Gordon, Barbara Gordon sequence is, again, just a strong defender for why we say read your books multiple times, read your story multiple times. You get different stuff out of a section when you know a little bit more of the background information. And it's kind of interesting because, one of the things when they first really started showing Gordon, they kind of made it look like he was the crooked cop, the cop on the take. He wasn't that same Jim Gordon that we know. But then we get this sequence when Barbara's talking about how the rent check just bounced. So he doesn't have money. So you're like, wait a minute. He's not a cop on the take. Why, what's going on there? Why isn't he fighting crime? Why isn't he doing that? Why isn't he being the Jim Gordon we know? And it feeds and adds to the story that's coming down the line. I really dig that about the fact that we get these layered parts of Jim Gordon, of Barbara Gordon, of Harvey when he's, hits the scene. This is the kind of stuff I want from a Batman story. I want a solid Bruce Wayne story. I want a solid Batman story, but I need a solid supporting cast. I need the people around him to be just that same type of level of commitment to them as well.
You know why the rent check bounced, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they don't have money.
No, because of Axe. Remember with Harvey Bullock? And Axe said he's going to take it out of his money? Remember when Harvey Bullock went up and punched Axe?
Right.
Axe was shaking down that guy for money. He said the money he lost is coming out of Gordon's pay. Gordon had to pay Axe.
Ah, okay.
That's why they didn't have the money for the rent check. Because remember, the rent check thing takes place after that whole sequence.
True. It did not dawn on me that it was the whole Axe thing taking the money. I was just thinking he doesn't have money.
No, he was, in that moment, Axe made him pay for it. So that's why they didn't have money for the rent. That's why Barbara had to work the extra night at the library. She was helping out for the family. So, in the meantime, Barbara's help, and this is something that, again, is getting to Gordon. His daughter is having to work extra, put herself at risk more in Gotham to help him to survive as well. And, that's something that also weighs on this guy. I think it leads to the Gordon that we get at the end. Enough is enough. I want to be the guy that I should be. I want to be this role model for my daughter that I should be. Because it's this great kid that I've got who's helping me out. We raised this really good kid, and look what she's doing, stepping up in these moments. I really loved how that all played out. That was something I got through multiple read-throughs. I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. He doesn't have money for the rent because of Axe. Axe said, you're going to pay for this. This is coming out of your pay. That's lost my money shaking this guy down. You're going to pay for that, Gordon.
That's actually kind of cool. I didn't think that way.
That shows you the power, though, of the fear that he had of Axe. And also, Gordon, if he didn't pay, would be afraid of the retribution to Barbara for not paying, to the point that he's willing to put rent money towards paying this guy. That, to me, it just added another layer to just how worried Gordon was that his wife's death was caused by these, he was the one who wasn't on the take. He wasn't a crooked cop. He was doing things the straight and narrow. The death of his wife changed all that because he needed to protect his daughter. Because he comes back with that justification later to Bullock. You think this is who I wanted to be? I didn't want to be the bad cop. I didn't want to be the guy that was, taking the easy way out. I didn't want to be the one that turned my head. I didn't want to take money. I had to do all this not because I want any of that, because I have to protect my daughter. And that moment with Axe, it just adds further to just how worried Gordon was for Barbara's safety. He gave rent money to Axe to keep any of them from getting hurt. Because if he didn't, so Bullock is constantly putting him in these situations because he's this outsider coming in thinking that he understands, I'm just going to come in and be the hero to save the day. It isn't until the end that we see Bullock realize just how wrong he was.
Man, Harvey Bullock, man, when they introduced him, I was a little bit shocked and stunned to see the pretty boy. I was so used to the overweight, gruff Harvey Bullock, and I'm like, hey, okay. The angle that they went with him, where he started, where he finished, and why he's at where he was just one of those really cool moments. But I liked the fact that they introduced him as the Hollywood TV show. And he's trying to be all, hey, look at me, yeah. And you're learning as the story goes on, it's not that he really is he's out for the headlines. He's the glory hound. His TV show gets canceled, and he's got nothing in Hollywood, so he's coming here figuring, hey, I can make this happen. We filmed a couple episodes about Gotham on a set. They didn't actually make it to Gotham because who knows what would have happened to the actors if they would have brought them to Gotham. And I just loved seeing just the opening story. You think, okay, bam. No, here's a little side story. Oh, here's a little bit more. Let's chip away at the pretty boy facade, and you're going to learn who Harvey is. And then you drop him, flip his world upside down, and bam, everything comes crashing down. It was just a wow. It was a really cool moment with Harvey.
Hi yourself, sweetheart. I love how that played out later. Did you see that girl making eyes at me? She was waving to her dad. I love that Harvey just totally didn't get that. And you can see Gordon just like, I'm ready to punch this guy. It's like, this is my daughter. I thought that was great. I like that the Arkham family in this world was a part of the Wayne history. It was Martha's family, and that just, the asylum is part of his inheritance, or Arkham's a part of his inheritance. And, I don't know if that's, he's going to eventually donate that to become an asylum or how that's going to work. That's something I'm very interested in Volume 2, which I'm glad they've announced there is going to be a Volume 2 of this, because I loved this one every bit as much as I loved the Superman one.
Yes, big time.
And it's really great that these are really crafting a very much a strong Superman world, a very strong Batman world. I don't know if I necessarily need to see the two meet. If they do, great. If they do Justice League Earth 1 eventually, great. Or if they do the Superman Batman Earth 1, great. If they don't, I'm fine with them just releasing these graphic novels and maybe doing one. I'm hoping if they're successful enough, they branch out to some other characters. I would love to see Wonder Woman Earth 1.
Yeah. You kind of wonder if they go a little bit more grittier. Our current Wonder Woman's pretty gritty.
I mean, just to see a different take on it, though, because
I know. It's Wonder Woman's a character that she's already had some pretty good edge to her. So that's something I wonder if they would, like, if I was going to completely try to turn Wonder Woman around and turn it up on just kind of do the shock and awe, or the change how they're doing with the Batman and Superman Earth 1. I wonder if they would get rid of the whole Amazon, if they would get rid of the whole gods thing, and it would just make it more of a very powerful female who is out to fight injustice. If they would go that whole route with her, kind of like how they proposed for the TV series that never happened.
I don't know. I don't really care. I think what works about Earth 1 to me is I'm assuming in both cases, in both pitches for Superman Earth 1 and Batman Earth 1, they took a look at how do you modernize Batman and Superman, not worrying about any continuity at all, starting from ground zero to make it today. That's one of the things that I think that works about both of these books is they're so separated from current continuity. I think you could do the Amazons and the gods in a new Wonder Woman book as well. I'm not saying they have to, because what you presented, I'm like, okay, that could work too. So I'm not disputing what you're saying. But I think you could also go tried and true, very traditional Wonder Woman and set it in this world and have it be very rich. And I don't know if everything necessarily in this world has to be gritty. I agree with you that Wonder Woman's story is naturally going to be gritty because that's just how Wonder Woman is. But I think they could do a Flash Earth 1.
Yeah.
And have it be very bright. And it's going to be different because this world's different. Like I could see, a central city being, something that, and the two cities, in the Flash world being something that is very different just because of the nature of this world. I would love to see how that plays out. I think they run a danger in these you don't want to do too many. You also want to take what you've crafted so well in Superman Earth 1 and Batman Earth 1, and you want to build off of that. They built a strong foundation here. So you don't want to oversaturate the market with these hardcovers to the point where we don't see them anymore. So I think we're going to, see them stick to like Superman and Batman. I would love to see them maybe do some form of anthology hardcover where, maybe in one book they introduce 3 characters or something. That would be kind of cool. to see what, Earth One, these three characters look like. And what I would do is I would pick maybe two heavily established characters and one oddball one that you wouldn't expect them to do. And I think that works in an anthology where the two headliners are the ones that are really the draw, but maybe some creator that has a really crazy cool idea for maybe like Plastic Man or something. Somebody who you don't normally think of as being, in this kind of core group. Because I still go back to things like Animal Man and Swamp Thing that I'm enjoying right now. Animal Man especially is one that I think it's one of my favorite books out of the New 52. And what I love about it, it's just so quirky and so cool and so utterly different than anything else that I'm reading. I would love to see something in Earth 1 do that with some character that you don't expect. And Animal Man's the one that I referenced because it wasn't the character that I would expect to be, like, for me, a breakout character that I'm really digging in the New 52, but he is. So I'd love to see Earth 1 have one of those characters. I don't know who it would be, but I would just love to see that happen.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to see some more come out of this universe. But again, it comes down to who's on the creative team, who are they going to go with. Mm-hmm. There's so many different, like, I would like to see Aquaman because I'm so Aquaman happy right now.
Yeah.
But again, we're getting a really cool, hardcore, gritty Aquaman. So I'm like, I don't know. It's funny, as you were saying Plastic Man, I was thinking the exact same thing that, Plastic would be kind of, PM would be kind of interesting in this world because definitely wouldn't be as goofy of a guy as we have in our world. He wouldn't be the comic relief slapstick. There would be a little bit difference to him. Maybe he would have a little bit more sicker, twisted sense of humor than what he currently has. Instead of the goofiness, it would go a little darker, a little bit edgier. I don't know. There's a lot of different stuff they could do with characters, and in this universe, and I would pick them up. You know me, I'd get them.
Yeah, and I think the right pitch. Don't force anything. Let creators pitch. And when they've got the right pitch, the right story, that's when you put it out. I think these worked because it was the right creators with the right pitch, that developed these really cool stories. So I'd love to see more of that, down the road. And I'm pretty open to whatever characters they want to do. To me, I think this should be a great platform to do original graphic novels of characters that, people really have a really cool, innovative story that they want to do, because I think this is innovative. It's amazing how creators can still innovate Batman after all this time and make it fresh and interesting, and Barbara Gordon and Jim Gordon and all these characters. And they haven't lost who they are. I don't feel like in any stretch these characters are alien to me in any way, shape, or form. They still feel like I will read this ongoing. They keep publishing these. I will keep reading them as long as I get this kind of quality. I don't know. It's a world that, to me, I find amazingly interesting.
Well, and it's kind of neat because we get a different take on why the bat. You always have the same thing where it's the one time it's the bat flies into the window after he just got his butt kicked. Another one, he falls down the shaft into the cave underneath and the bats scare him. Here we have with the mausoleum with the bats there and then the armor that's right there and all that. It's the same basic of, that feel of fear. Scare the villains. Time for them to fear what I dread. But it's not... they didn't go the whole route with criminals or a cowardly and superstitious lot. But it's that same sentiment behind it. It's the same feel, the same vibe to it, but a little bit different. This, Earth One spin, Earth One take on it, and I really enjoyed that. I was like, yeah, this is. I'm glad we get a reason why it's a bat, but it's not what we've always seen.
Now the suit of armor was Alfred's.
Yeah.
In Pennyworth stuff. So it was kind of funny how, like, running away from the mausoleum with all the bats, and then it leads to this suit of armor with the bat symbol around its neck and on the helmet. I love that it comes from Alfred's World Travels.
A question always popped in my head. Where did the armor come from? Again, more questions on Alfred. Who is Alfred? What did he do before this? Where did he come from?
I would love to read Alfred Earth 1.
God, yeah.
Like a whole background to him, seeing how, and then seeing during his life where he and Thomas had that dark moment, or that, that dark series of moments that they keep referring to. I don't know that they necessarily have to do that, though, because part of me really likes the mystery as well. I like those unanswered questions where you're left to speculate through little teases and things. Whether they decide to flesh that out or not, I'm happy either way. Or maybe that's something digitally they could do down the road, as a series of weekly releases or something. I don't know. I don't know what, how they should do that. I would love to know more. And that's a sign of a good story. Whether they tell you or not, you should want to know more. If you care about the characters enough, you're going to want to know more. I would love to know more of anything from Bruce's life growing up. I'm wondering if the Volume 2 is going to do more of that or not. Again, doesn't matter either way. As long as they give me this quality of a story, I'm a very, very happy camper. But I love that this is a world where I want to know more. I want to see more. And that's something that I think was a real treat of this whole thing. We talked about Harvey earlier, and I'll kind of jump to this because he saw that horrific thing, and I do think we see him in the long trench coat where we see a Harvey who is going to become that bloated drunk that we're very used to Harvey being, that hard-edged guy who just, the world has really put him in a horrifying place. Again, seeing how traumatic horrors will send somebody on a very different path. You're heading down one straight line, and then that sets a fork in the road that it's very hard, if not impossible, to completely get back on that path that you were originally on.
That would be just god-awful, horrific sight to see. He fell into a room of rotting corpses of little children, of little girls, and just... that would be something that just, the smell, the sight, just you'll never get it out of your mind. You'll never, be able to unsee what you saw. And it was a powerful moment. And I love seeing Harvey just like, I gotta run, gotta get out of here. And he's just completely lost all composure. You see that same dead look on his face. Even when they get out of later on, he doesn't jump in front of the camera. Well, he doesn't he's not glory hogging in front of the cameras like, hey, look at me. No, it's just, you see the deadness in his eyes. And I was just like, wow, that's, right there. It's the change of Harvey. And, when he first steps into that, liquor store, he's like, the strongest thing you have. Give me the strongest thing you have. I was just like, whoa, there we go. This is going to be a nasty path for Harvey.
When Bruce and Alfred are talking in that one moment, and Alfred's saying to him, why the bad is because you got scared at the mausoleum, and these are the type of people that won't get scared. Bruce is right. Everyone gets scared. It's a matter of finding out what that thing is that will push somebody over the edge. And I love that Alfred's making the point that the bat's not going to scare everybody, and Bruce is making the point, well, then I will have to find out what does scare them. And I think that, there's a conversation there between the two where it's a mentor, friend relationship where Bruce is showing his intelligence, Alfred is showing his, different experiences meeting together. And in many ways, these are pivotal moments that are making a better Batman. This leads to what's going to happen later with the building the better Batman. I loved those moments. I thought there was something special about them.
Well, and I always like it when I see someone try to talk Bruce out of being Batman. Because no intelligent, sane person would think, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll go for it. You got to have the people around him, the non-yes men around him saying, dude, this is nuts. You can't do this. What are you doing? You got to stop this. And I enjoyed seeing that, but I also liked when Bruce pointed out the lighter and showed Alfred the picture and said, hey, he's got the Dad's lighter. I gave it to Dad. There you can see that opening in Alfred's mind saying, hey, there's something going on here. He's on to something. There's, and he was open to the concept. Not completely 100%, yay, let's go Team Batman, but there was, it began, the notions that we see later on began right then and there.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Jim, I want to shout out really quick. We're big fans of Jamal Igle on the show, and he's doing a Kickstarter for an original graphic novel called Molly Danger, and it's mollydanger.com has the information. It's one of these Kickstarter campaigns, and I don't know if you've done any of this. I did the one for Athena Voltaire. I also did the one for Womanthology, And I've done a few for some video games. I was a big fan of Space Quest by Sierra, and the two guys from Andromeda who put that together are doing a brand new PC game. I love these Kickstarters. Tom Zoller did one. We're fans of Love and Capes. He did a Kickstarter recently. It's a cool way when it comes to comics for like original ideas to get some backing, to get them started. And you get some cool swag extras along with, you're basically pre-purchasing the graphic novel by donating through Kickstarter. If you take a look at the different options, there's everything from $1 straight on through. So it's an easy to be a part of the Kickstarter to help Jamal fund this. I really encourage people to go and check out the website and to have a chance to be a part of it, because I think there's something special when you see something to come to fruition that you know that, hey, I was backing it behind the scenes. If you're a fan of Jamal Igle's work, you would have seen it in things such as Firestorm. You would have seen it in Supergirl. Wonderful run with Sterling Gates on Supergirl. If you haven't read that, I can't recommend that highly enough. Zatanna he's done recently, the miniseries The Ray. Go on and on, Jamal's work. I'm a big fan of the work that he does. If you've met him at conventions or seen him online, he is one of the nicest guys around. Do yourself a favor and support this Molly Danger and be a part of it, because I just think it's a super cool project, and I'm a big fan of this Kickstarter. So it's mollydanger.com. Support Jamal Igle.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster.
I love when we see Arkham, and you see him with Dent's twin sister.
Yeah.
You know that, like, talk about somebody who has a target painted on her. Or I often wondered if maybe that possibly in this world the target's painted on Harvey and Jessica could become Two-Face. You know, one way or another, one of these two are not going to survive, right? I mean,
yeah, something horrific's happening to one of them. I assumed that she was going to die, and that would be part of the beginning of Harvey Dent, Two-Face. But to be honest, we could very easily have a female Two-Face in this. Mm-hmm. And that would actually even add to a little bit more, because the whole thing behind Harvey Dent and Bruce's friendship and Batman, association with Harvey Dent as the DA was a neat, connection that he had. The fact that Bruce has such a close relationship with her, making her Two-Face would even add a whole nother, level to the story. It would be, part of me hopes they go with the female Two-Face. Now, I like the classic. I like, if they go with, regular Harvey as Two-Face, I'm not going to sit there, oh, they should have gone. But there's a part of me that would really like to see a female Two-Face, see where she comes from, how she was born as compared to how, the Two-Face, the Harvey Two-Face we're used to happens.
What's interesting about this is you see this young Harvey who's kind of a bully, and he grows up to be a DA. So he grows up to be a good guy, and I wonder if that isn't his sister's influence that helped him to go on the straight and narrow path. So even if he becomes Two-Face, her role and relationship in this with him is something that has deeply, I think, affected his development. This is somebody who clearly he looks up to. She becomes the mayor of Gotham in the end of all this, which, again, I think that we see that as the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's going to happen in the next one or not, I don't care. I like them. I like that I'm interested in them. I like that I want to see more of their story and where it goes. I love the urban legend of what happened to his family.
Yeah.
The grandmother killing the grandfather with a sledgehammer and jumping to her death. How true all of that is. Obviously something horrific happened there, because Martha always told Bruce to avoid that place. But the question is the story that Harvey told true? Is that an exaggerated story? What led to all that? I don't know. I'm interested. This is another example of how much of the mythos are we going to learn, and how much of it is going to remain for us as the readers, urban legends. I don't know. Again, don't really care.
Yeah.
I like that certain elements of this, we don't know if we're going to get those mysteries solved. I think there's a reality to that. And you talked again about that reality at the beginning of the episode. I think that's realistic. There's going to be things that we just don't know. How much does Bruce really know?
Well, you think about it, his mom never really went into it because he was a little kid. So when the parents died and Alfred took over, he wouldn't know the truth behind the story. And I can't see Alfred going, exploring and having Bruce explore that side of his family. So there's a whole huge gap and mystery and void that's in Bruce's life. And I really, you think about the Arkham family, you think about immediately Arkham Asylum, and just you think everything going on where that and where it could go. I don't see Earth 1 having an Arkham Asylum, just because the Arkham family is pretty much dead. But part of me wonders if, Bruce will donate that land or donate the house. Now, I personally would level that thing, after everything that's happened in there. I'd be like, okay, we need to just completely clear the ground. Let's level it. Let's burn the ground. Let's bring in some, incense and some various other, religious figures. And let's chase away all the demons from this ground.
Incense and Lysol, it'll fix everything.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's all you need is a little better smell.
A little potpourri, you'll be okay.
Potpourri has and flowers.
But it's neat though that something as simple as Martha's family being the Arkhams would change so many different stuff, and that's something I never even remotely thought of a line of a progression or a change that can be made to the whole Wayne mythos, to the whole Batman mythos. And it's such a small, simple change, but it is actually really a cool, brilliant moment that there's still more story that can be told from this.
And that's one of the things, you're changing the mythos by using elements of the mythos. That was a key, too, because you could have made it Arkham, you could have made it Martha's family and not use something from the mythos and introduce something new. Very cool way to bring an Arkham into this and just with a different twist. That's important, too. I think when you're doing this and you're setting it on a different Earth, I've always liked alternate Earths because you see the characters that you know and love. You recognize them immediately by certain elements that are in place, but it is little curveballs like that define and differentiate the world and make the story fresh and unique and different. And that's something that's really cool because I feel like I'm getting a great Batman fix from this, but it's different enough that like every time they release a new version of this, it's going to be set apart from what's going on in current continuity just because it's different. And this has been a strength of, I go back to Elseworlds again. I always loved that kind of stuff because of that. Because I'm getting, I'm a Batman junkie. I love that cool stuff. I love more Batman. But you can still take that idea, twist it by making sometimes just one tiny change has a ripple effect that makes the whole world vastly different. Setting Batman at a different time, setting Batman in a different place, setting Batman as getting a green power ring. All these little different type of things you can do is something that will create a whole new story in this world. Yeah, the Arkham thing is a really nice twist. That's something I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Lucius Fox.
Oh.
Another change, but it's still the same guy. It's still the same feel, the same vibe. This is a young Morgan Freeman for me. Mm-hmm. Right here, I had that same feel that I get from the movies, that same comfort level that I had with this kid here. It's kind of, I was like, oh, that's cool. Again, he's still an engineer. He's still a thinker. He's not the business executive. He's not the building weapons software. No, he's, with artificial limbs and just the prosthetics and that side of it. I was like, man, nice twist, but still true and really cool character.
I love that the arm that he was crafting for his sister is still on the shelf.
Yeah.
And Bruce sees it when he goes in. And I love that he's sitting there saying to himself, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And there's a reason why they developed this relationship. He's like, look, I need somebody with your talents. You want to be back on top of this project again so you can craft something for a personal family member. I'm willing to do this for you if you keep my secret. There's something I liked about that. The Lucius knowing the secret was something that, to my knowledge, was something pretty exclusive to the Batman series done by Nolan on film. I don't think that was done in comics. You could argue that, okay, Lucius is a smart man and maybe, at some point in time he might have figured things out a little bit. Kind of like how we always say that Gordon knows. Even though, maybe subconsciously Gordon knows, but he never lets that come to the surface. Lucius has always been that question mark for me, too, just with how close he works with Wayne. And sometimes where Wayne will show a spark of, really being on top of things, Lucius would kind of say, okay, how much of this is an act, and start doing the math. Okay, I get that. But in Batman Begins and that whole series, it's really clear that Lucius knows and has been in on it all along. Because how do you not know your stuff's running around town? As he was asked in Dark Knight. You know, I mean, that was something that was brought to the forefront in Dark Knight. And I loved that. That was something that was cool. In this case, Bruce saying to himself, okay, Wayne Medical Group, Board of Directors, I have access to these resources. Who is a guy who really could use something from me? And I can get something from him. The foxhole, going inside there, letting this genius, who he clearly Bruce did his research on, saying, okay, this guy's brilliant. You know, if he can do this for me, I'm more than willing to put him in a spot where he can do something better for the world, including his sister. That was something I thought was neat.
Yeah, and am I the only person, when we first get that initial panel, I thought it was Batman visiting Lucius Fox. The way they had Bruce standing, he was with the trench coat, and then he had his umbrella right there. Yeah. It kind of looked like the edge of the cape. And I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Batman's visiting. Then the next page was like, no, it's Bruce. Oh, wow, that's cool.
The way he was holding the umbrella, I thought that was a great, clever use of the artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really cool just moment.
Yeah. And it's even the way he's like hunched, it would lead to the kind of shadow that you would normally be used to. And I thought that was really, really awesome. Now, we go back to Gordon, and we already talked about this sequence because it led to, as we mentioned, the money issues earlier for Gordon. But I love how Harvey's saying, where are the nice parts of Gotham? This is the nice part.
Oh, God, yeah. That, you know what? And again, really kudos on the art team. Just because of the grittiness, the disgustingness behind what is, you know, Gotham. You really do see that it's not a nice, clean place. It's not, you know, a fun, you know, happy-go-lucky neighborhood. But they didn't do it by doing heavy shadows and heavy darkness. You still get plenty of detail, but you get the grime. You see the dirt. You see the filth. You see everything that's there. And I really, that's something that I love, and, you know, a really high attention to detail, high focus artwork, along with the story, you know, a strong team working together. Really just, it makes everything pop.
You know, one of the things I liked about Axe was the tattoo of the snake on his face and neck. And one of the reasons why I like that is I think that's any time that artists will do a little extra detail like that, you're almost setting yourself up for a difficulty when it comes to drawing them, because you want to draw that consistently, no matter what change in profile the character has. So I loved that little like twist because it added to me a sense of personality to Axe. You know, because, you know, if you're going to tattoo your face like that, you know, I'm not a person that, I don't have any tattoos. I respect it. I think they're super cool. I just, for me, my idea, if I was ever going to get a tattoo, it would be something that I have to, you know, I would like have a lot of conviction for. Whereas, you know, I've got neighbors and friends who've got really cool tattoos that they've done. I don't know if they had conviction for them or not, whatever. They just really like the whole process of getting tattooed. I think that's cool. Got nothing against it at all. But I think there's a whole different level when you're tattooing your face all the way down to your neck. And as an artist, when you're making the choice to throw that in to a character, you're setting yourself up for somebody who's going to be a little bit more challenging to draw consistently throughout the book, because you want that to fall in a spot where readers aren't going, hey, it wound up by his ear now. It's a tattoo, not moving. You know, that was something that I really liked.
See, I think you could pull off the face tattoo.
You think so?
Oh, I'm definitely thinking, you know, we could do the Hawkman wings right on the, you know, just like on kind of like the side of your face.
You think as a teacher that people would like that?
Yeah, I'm sure there'd be no problems with that. No issues at all.
But I thought that was cool. I thought it was a cool little distinction, because I thought that Gary Frank and crew, you know, set themselves up then to, you have to consistently catch that. I love
they stepped up. Again, it's the whole arts, you know, the whole art team. Just, you know, they had to have had that conversation that we just, you know, the stuff you just said about, you know, do we really want to do an face tattoo? Because remember this scene, he's gonna be like this scene, you know. But that was you know, that's a moment of, okay, let's do this, let's throw down.
I love the emotion of Gordon. We already talked a little bit about his confrontations with Harvey over Harvey not understanding this world, but this was a great sequence. Don't lecture me from some fictional moral high horse as if you've come here for any other reason than publicity and self-promotion. As soon as you hit the same wall everyone else has, trying to solve the murders of the Waynes, you'll be back on the first plane to Los Angeles, and I'll buy the ticket. Don't judge me, Bullock. You don't know me. And in that moment, you see a Gordon who's like, this was not the life I set out for myself. You don't know my background. You don't know my loss of my wife. You don't know the worries for my daughter. You don't know what guilt I have to live with every single day. You're just visiting here. You're just seeing this from the outside looking in. Try really living here. Try dealing with the fact that because you punched this guy, I'm going to have to pay for it. I'm going to have to wonder where rent's going to come from. Those moments where you're sitting there reading that through a second time and realizing just what Gordon knows he's going to have to do in that moment, realizing how much he's going to have to pay Axe in order to, fix, quote unquote, fix this problem. And then, Bullock just keeps continuing because he still doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reality, because if we went into this world, we wouldn't get it either, because, we'd be like the dun dun, hey, we can do something and all that type of stuff. Unfortunately, in Gotham, you probably don't get it till you're slapped in the face by Gotham, which Bullock eventually gets. By the end of the book, I think it's clear by then, Bullock gets it. And you can almost see why these two would become comrades at arms, because, Bullock's going to be kind of like, Jim, you were right. When he picks himself off the floor. But, that's something where I think the personality of Gotham was developed well in the story.
Yeah, and the fire and the rage of Gordon, that sequence right there, that was one of those, the first time through, I was like, wait, what? He's backing down? What's going on here? And the second time through, you're like, you completely understand where he's coming from, but just that anger, that flash of rage at, Bullock completely calmed me. Because I had that initial moment of him backing down and, making it look like maybe he was on the take or something was going on with him and Axe and, what's going on here. But you see that anger, you see that fire of Gordon, and you're like, okay, there's something more to the story. I'm not getting it all yet, but I get it later on. And I love that aspect of the story being told, because you see this, but they immediately let you know, hey, it's not exactly what you're thinking. There's something more to this story.
He has to play along.
Yeah. And you get that feeling right from that moment, right from that fire, right from that anger. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. It's like when back in Batman Begins, that first introduction of Gordon, where he doesn't take the money, and the cop's like, hey, if you don't take a taste, Jimmy, everyone gets a little bit nervous. He's like, what? Who am I going to go to in a town like this? And he's not a crooked cop, but he's not a rat. He's not going to rat anybody out. And he's got no one to go to. And I had that same type of feel from this Jim Gordon as I did from Batman's Begins Jim Gordon.
That's a good comparison, because, I look at the Nolan Batman movies as being kind of their own set-contained piece. The three movies, they kind of wrapped up a cool story. It is one of those, again, I'm going to recommend that if you've seen it once, go. Did you get a chance to see it again?
Not yet.
It's one that I recommend seeing to anybody, whether you liked it or you didn't, watching it again, because very similar to how we're talking about this graphic novel, you pick up a lot more. And I really, ideally, I encourage everyone, start at Begins, watch Dark Knight, then go see Dark Knight Rises. Do it over a multiple night viewing or something like that to really enjoy that experience, because I gained so much more out of sitting through that marathon. And I don't think you have to do it that way where it's bam, bam, bam in the same night. But, if in the same week you can watch all three and really kind of connect with the large story that unfolded in that. I think there's a lot of cool comparisons to what this graphic novel does. They're two different worlds, but I think it's really clear that it's not our world. It's not the Earth. And when I say our world, it's not the New 52 continuity that we're reading right now, or even the one that was before Flashpoint. It's their own separate takes on what Batman is. And when you view them that way, you kind of see a cool story that's unfolded that shows that they really understand what makes Batman cool, while at the same time doing their own take on how he affects his world, what the background story is for the characters. And I never at any point in time feel like anybody isn't, who the even Cobblepot, when you see him here, I love that Cobblepot isn't your traditional look for the Penguin.
Yeah.
He's got the nose and the hair and the look that you expect, but he's really a prim and proper from money kind of person there. Whether it was money that he earned through cricket means or whatever. Oh, I don't know in this world, if the Cobblepot family has that rich history or not. But, I love that when you see him in that moment, he does look like this slimy person, but you could also see why people might elect him. Because he does look clean. He does look proper. And I don't know, there's something about him that I could see him being somebody where obviously he's done things and evoked change of some sort in Gotham, convinced people, probably the right people with the right money to promote him, that he's good for Gotham, whether they want to say to the publicly that he's good for Gotham or not. I love the whole twist, though, when Bruce is walking up the stairs of him saying, "Thank you, Mr. Cobblepot. Please, it's Mayor Cobblepot." Just a dig once again in there. For show, he's saying how much he appreciates the legacy of the Wayne and Arkham families, but it's this backhanded thing of never forget, yeah, they might have done this, but I run Gotham now. That was what that mayor moment was with Bruce. It's I get it, your family had this big history here, and publicly I'm going to pat you on the back because you're coming back on the scene again, but you just remember who's really in charge. Not your dad, me.
Yeah, that was a great, just the boom opening. You see that it's Cobblepot, and I smacked myself. I really I can't believe I didn't think it was going to be Penguin. Because it never entered my head that that's who he's running against, even though they're saying, the slimy, he's got the unions, and he's not good, he's not clean, he's dirty, he's not right for Gotham. Never once did it enter my head that it was going to be Cobblepot. And so when you get those moments, you're like, oh, why didn't I see that? And just the subtle changes they made in him physically. And it's something, if he was running for politics, he would need to have a little bit cleaner cut. He would need to have a little bit, that kind of that face. You don't just elect a person behind, their ideals and things. There is the whole showmanship. Yeah. There is the whole presence behind the election process. And then in Gotham, even adds it to a whole nother level to it. But the thing that really got me was when we see Cobblepot later on, after the party, and we get to see the disgusting animal. We get to see his vicious nature. The smarmy, egocentric Oswald Cobblepot, Mayor Cobblepot, that you see there, and then you see the animal side of him.
Yes.
I love just those two contrasts, the clean and then the dirty, and it was like, oh, now that's how you do a character.
When Bruce first gets out of the car, you see the guy that has the public politician image.
Yeah.
You see the villain when he says it's Mayor Cobblepot.
Yeah. That is just, again, that is just some great, simple, subtle usages of the character. And just a couple lines, how they do the close-up of him. Because you're thinking maybe he's going to say, please, call me Oswald. No, that's not his style. That's not who he is. He's not the nice guy. He's not your buddy. He's the mayor. He's the man in charge. Let me just twist the knife a little bit.
Happy birthday. And we see this Amanda thing kind of laid out for us, which we find out later this was his first victim was Amanda. So everybody becomes Amanda after that. Now, I don't think he lets them tell the wish.
No. He stops them before they could tell the wish.
Yeah. And I don't know at that moment that you're really thinking of any other wish other than, I want to live. At the party, I love that we find out that Bullock doesn't drink at all.
Yeah.
The shock that Jim Gordon has at Bruce being there. This is somebody, I wonder how long Bruce was out of the public eye. With this whole thing with crafting Batman and all that, because, Alfred made mention to him that, Bruce is coming back onto the public scene and that type of thing. Everyone's going to be all over you when you do that. So it's something that, again, we saw in Batman Begins when he came back. I like this idea that when he became obsessed with becoming Batman and started crafting this kind of lifestyle for himself, that he really had to drop off the face of the earth. So then he makes this public appearance again, and people are really shocked by it. Jim Gordon, knowing that Bruce went through something horrid because of the corruption of Gotham, and I think that shock comes from that. Knowing that, hey, your family died, your family could have been part of the change of Gotham. There's so much unsaid there and unspoken in just Gordon's reaction there. And then Bruce goes after Weaver.
Yeah, and I loved Harvey's reaction, how they used Harvey again. It's everything that played out from that, beginning of he doesn't drink. Do we see how that goes? And then Harvey approaching Bruce, and talking about, hey, no crime unsolved. And he goes, didn't they just cancel that show? And just completely, bam, drops it on Harvey. And I was like, that is, just a really cool, just moment. Again, it nicks away a little bit of the false wall that Harvey's putting up. He put up, hey, I'm the successful Hollywood detective. No, he's not a successful Hollywood detective. He's a former actor of a canceled show who's desperate for some headlines, who's desperate for something to jumpstart his career, and Bruce called him on it. I loved seeing that. Again, it's that Bruce Wayne isn't just, he's not the playboy. There is more to him. There is that, that person who does have his connection to the Pulse, and he knew exactly how to hit Harvey, where to hit Harvey, just from a split second of meeting him. That was a really cool people moment.
Now, one of the advantages of not doing the armor and doing more of the nylon-y, t-shirt-y type of material is you can do these iconic moments where you unbutton the shirt and the suit's underneath.
Yeah.
I geek out over those. And I love the armor suit and all that for the functionality. You and I actually are very similar in our interest in functionality and the costumes and how they're developed. But then there is that traditional part of me that's like, sometimes the cloth suit is just fine. This moment, the cloth suit is just fine.
Yes.
Because I love that.
Completely.
I'm going to bring him down, and you can't get that with a suit of armor. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that had a classic Batman feel to it. That just had that, how many times as kids did we all do the opening of the shirt? Now, most of the time it was a Superman open, but there was times that you open up the shirt and there's the Batman crest right underneath it. You were Bruce Wayne getting ready to, deal with the bad guys.
On the rooftop when he finds the lighter and he's ready to get his questions answered, this again shows a Green Batman, not aware of his surroundings. Kind of goes back to what was it? Roz was always saying in Batman Begins, always be aware of your surroundings, always be aware of, things coming down around you and that type of thing. This is a Bruce who clearly is not as well trained as the Batmans we've seen in the past, especially when he gets a prick to the head. I love, though, that he does have training, though, because he recovers quickly and takes advantage of the kicking out the kneecap. Because that's a guy who is not going to walk again for a while after the way that he was kicked.
I liked when they started shooting at him, he did have the cape kind of acted as a distraction for the shot. And you see the bullets going through the cape instead of going through Bruce. That is a very viable, tactic, to have when you're shooting, you're targeting, and you're aiming. It's easy to say, oh, aim center mass, aim for the bright yellow logo, and it's just. But when you're just, when you're pulling up, aiming, and shooting fast, you're not always going to have a clean shot. You're not going to have take a second, pause, breathing. You're not going to be able to check, 1, 2, 3, what you need to do to have a perfect shot. So the cape itself, that's going to physically throw off the form. That is going to throw off a person's shot. And I like seeing that it was part of, who he is, and part of what helped him survive this fight was the fact that there was a little bit of distraction there.
I loved how messy the first use of the grapple was. We got to see that cool redone grapple. Bruce is testing it for the first time because he has no choice while he's falling. and really at this point, if he falls, he's dead. The catch of that, and even when it catches on there, you see his body react to it catching quickly. He hasn't figured out how to balance his body yet for it and how to react to it. Comes smashing through the window in a way that's very awkward. Even the landing, smashing through the table. Things are being knocked all over the place. And thank goodness he has some things in those pouches. I love the utility belt. I've always loved the pouch look of the utility belt when they do those type of things. Not to say that I don't love the modern techie-looking version of the utility belt, because it's a more experienced Batman who would have that stuff. But this early version of Batman would have pouches with things like, smoke to, again, give himself an appearance. And it adds that mass you're talking about. You're shooting at a big cloud of smoke instead of a set dead mass for a guy. That's where, again, how does a cloth costume work? A cloth costume works if you use other things like the cape and the environment and smoke and tricks and effects to make yourself larger than you actually are. It ups your chances of not actually getting hit by bullets and things. I've always liked that aspect of Batman. It's where a cloth suit can work for me instead of it being just a straight-up suit of armor like we've always seen. I think both elements work. I like seeing it both ways. The narrow escape in that moment, running out to Alfred, seeing himself all wrecked and bruised and things. I love the worry on Alfred's face because this is a guy who's been a surrogate parent. That was something that really stood out as being something kind of special for me because you're driving away in the back. Look how beaten up and bruised up Batman is in that moment.
Yeah, he took his lumps there. And again, I'm sitting there reading this saying, yeah, okay, that kind of stuff would happen. That's what I would go through, only actually probably worse because, I don't know that sticking the landing, he had a rough landing, but he still managed to get up from it. It's that whole, crash with the crash landing rule. Any landing you can walk away from is a good one. Well, he not only was able to walk away from it, he was able to fight his way from it. So I really dig seeing just him struggle, his scramble, him bob and weave, and just it's not the same, smooth, clear, cut, crisp Batman we're used to. And those differences, those, little accentuations, those personalizations of Earth 1 Batman really had me go, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's awesome. And it's stuff I would love to see this sequence on the big screen. I would love to see the big broad swing, as he's crashing through the window. Then he scrambles some more. And just that collapsing in the car of sheer exhaustion and pain. That was, again, great visual, great facial moments, great just recognition. And you could feel his pain. You were right along there with Bruce.
The Dark Knight Returns is going to be released as a 2-part animated feature, which is a way to get past, the shorter length of the animated features and you really give it a full, almost, I guess, close to a 3-hour movie feature when you do that. I'd be curious to see how long the runtime actually winds up being between the two. This is one, though, I would love to see this. I'd love to see Superman Earth 1 done as 2-part animated features where you get the whole story, because I think the stories are worthy of that. I know with Year One having been released so recently for Batman, I think you might want to wait a little bit to do that, but I would eventually love to see that done in an animated feature.
I'd jump on it in a heartbeat. That would be a yes, must see this,
Especially if they honor the art style, because I think it would distinguish it.
Oh, definite.
The Arkham background, when you see it's rust instead of blood that's coming out of the buildings, you can see why that look of the building would make people go, hey, this is an area where these horrible things happened. To me, that adds to the urban legend. Obviously, people died here, or something horrid happened. Maybe multiple horrid things happened in this place. You wonder how much has been embellished. And I could see where things like that, the rust on the side of the building, would add to the embellishment of the story. Like, how much farther has the story gone from the actual truth of whatever horrors happened inside this place? I would read Arkham Earth 1. I would love to read that book just to see what that twisted place was like from its conception straight on through till the end, to wind up in this particular state, because I think that's an interesting story.
I'm noticing there's a lot of Earth 1s we would read.
Yeah, that's a sign that you've crafted an interesting world when you want to know more of the stories. You want to know the side stories. I would love miniseries set in this world. I think if you go too crazy with it, where you're doing like you go into paper comic miniseries from this, I think you take away from the special nature of what's being done with these hardcovers. So I'm not necessarily saying they should do that. I wouldn't argue if they did, but I do think there's so much that I want to know about this world, and I always want it to be that way. Like when they release part 2, I never want to feel like I've got the whole story. I want to feel like there's always more for me to more that I want to know, more that I can assume that happened, more that I can stretch my imagination and try to figure out. And I think that's a sign of good storytelling as well. When this is complete stories told here, you get everything that you really need, but you're left with some lore that as a fan you can people can do fan fiction for, and I'm a fan of that kind of stuff too. There's a lot of great writers who got their start doing fan fiction, and this world's ripe for the picking for fan fiction.
Time. Oh, big time. Yeah, there's a lot of just areas that you can go with this, and I want to read the stories. I want to see them. I want to know what's going on here. This is, again, it's energy and excitement. I was thrilled with Superman, and then when we heard Superman Part 2 was coming out, now Batman Part 2 will be coming out eventually. I want more. Give me more. Give me more. And it's a statement of just how happy I am with the comic book reading, in general statement, but it's also just a declaration of how, cool this universe is and how close they're getting to the Batmans and the Supermans that I love. These characters, the heart of the character. And it's definitely, a very strong franchise that they could do more with, but they're keeping it close to the vest. I doubt we're going to get all this stuff that we would love to see, but in my head, I already have the stories being told, and I think that's something that just, is kind of a neat experience for me, that I can sit there and, while I'm reading this, you stop and you think a little bit about what happened in the Arkham house, or what happened to, her family, what happened, to her as a little girl. Because, growing up, she saw some crazy stuff. There was some weird stuff going on because the house he lives in was built by the grandparents. So why did they move from the crazy house to the cool house? What happened there? What was the final event that, what was that final straw that broke the camel's back? It's, there's so many different things that you can actually approach and think on this. It shows the strength of the story being told.
I like when on television they're talking about Batman and what happened the night before, because that would be big news. Who was this lunatic who crashed the mayor's party last night? I love you see the different reactions of Bruce, Lucius, where Lucius is like, it looks like he's working on the arm again for his sister, to kind of keep working through that project. Yet he's got to recognize his own handiwork there. Barbara, for her first time, getting a glimpse and exposure into what's going to lead to drawings later for her. And the police, where Gordon's sitting there with his nose all taped up, and they're looking for the opportunity needling him. Because you can imagine that the police in this world, because of the fact that most of them are on the take, they've all got these inferiority complexes because of it. Because I honestly have a ton of respect for police officers and what they do. It's a very dangerous line of work and things like that. But I think when you violate the original reason why you became a police officer, and this isn't take police officers out of it, any career where you've got some kind of moral conviction that should be going along with it, and you violated that, you're going to have that part where there's an opportunity to really dig in and needle somebody. I loved Harvey's stature in this, because you see the other three guys clearly needling Gordon angry at the whole thing, and Harvey very stern, not needling his partner. He could have, but he didn't.
Yeah, here's the thing with cops. I'm yet to meet one who wouldn't bust balls over something like that, and they would really go at somebody. But it's kind of a neat distinction that you're pointing out of how Harvey's sticking up for his partner. Now, had this been like a very normal situation, this all been just regular, everyday cops, they would all be cracking jokes on the fact that Gordon is the one who got punched in the nose, and he's got a broken nose. The rest of them got a little banged up, but Gordon's actually broke a nose, and they'd be laughing about it. But there is a difference between Gordon and the other guys, and Gordon and them. And it's not just your friendly, everyday cops who, this is what they do. They're taking this to a whole nother level. They're taking this to beyond the, hey, good job there. Hey, at least you stopped his fist with your face. Good job. It's just the general funny, goofiness, picking on each other. They're taking this a level above and beyond that.
Yes.
And that is something really cool to see in the artwork, in the presence, and just the mannerisms they're standing.
With traditional ball busting, which is what you're talking about, that's camaraderie.
Yeah.
And even if Gordon's angry afterwards, that later on he's going to get it back to them when something happens to one of them. In this group, I don't know who trusts who likes each other, who doesn't. That's the difference between a police force. A police force is a group of people who, there's a camaraderie there. Sure, you might get annoyed with each other from time to time and stuff like that, but there's a camaraderie. There's a friendship that's built. There's a respect that goes at a certain point in time. When you got a group like this, I don't know how any of them can respect each other or trust each other, because it's a world where in order to survive, you have to either regularly throw people under the bus or pay people off in order to just live and survive and thrive in this world. So it's not a traditional police force in the sense of what we're used to. And I respect the police. I think, so I mean, everything I'm saying here is not a knock on the police. I would say this about any career that's being presented. It just happens in this case, you got a corrupt police force that's set in the Gotham world. Everybody's corrupt in the Gotham world. But I love how this sequence was drawn in a way where I really saw the distinction between two people who clearly want to be. Say what you will about Harvey. Harvey wants to be a respected cop. It's just the way that he's gone about it leads to a lack of respect from other police officers, from the TV show and all that. He's not down in the dirt and all that stuff. It's what Gordon has an issue from with him. Gordon always wanted to be a good cop. Circumstances led him to this path where he doesn't respect these other guys who clearly are embracing what he has to do out of salvation for his daughter. And so you see the distinction, and it's funny how Gordon and Harvey's posture make me disrespect the other three. And I think that's something that's a distinction between the way this was shot versus a group of people where Harvey would be joining in and they'd all be needling and ball busting each other. Even with Gordon a little pouty, I would have said that differently if it wasn't this world.
Yeah, big time. It's a really cool moment and again, it's a silent page and it's letting the artwork tell the story. And it's multiple boom, 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 looking at the different panels, the different people reacting to it. I loved how that played out. And, usage of the news media to relay this to over a wide spectrum of people. It was a really, really, it was a well-crafted part.
Happy birthday to Weaver. Happy birthday to Weaver. Happy birthday, dear Weaver. Make a wish. I loved this. Cobblepot's, first of all, the smart thing is you don't kill him first. You get the information from him. I hate criminals. I hate that whole world and everything like that. But to me, you hate them even more when they're smart and they do things that make sense. It makes sense that he would try to get, this guy came crashing through my window. What did he want? He was after Weaver first. Why? What does this guy in the mask know? How much does he know? Is he coming after me? Is he trying to hurt me? Weaver's trying to cover his own tracks because Weaver knows right now, in this moment, he's a ticking time bomb. So whatever he's got to say, let me settle up with Cobblepot so Cobblepot's not worried about me. And Cobblepot's like, then find somebody to pay Birthday Boy with because we need to be done with him. Wow.
I was actually, I was kind of glad that Birthday Boy just doesn't go after the little girls. Because I didn't know if that was his only ticket at this point in time. And it was a really cool way of showing that Birthday Boy is completely in Cobblepot's, pocket, that he's got control and manipulation over him. It was one of those things that it shows the level of depravity that Cobblepot has, that, it's really he is just a nasty, nasty creature.
Well, I guess when you're saying Birthday Boy doesn't just go after the little kids, he will go after adults and things in an exchange for what he really wants. He wants another Amanda.
Yeah.
So it is kind of his own twistedness. It's a grim, twisted world. I really like that in this world, there is nothing of salvation to the villains. They're clearly villains. And there's something, I like gray area villains. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy that. But it's refreshing sometimes to see villains that you really kind of go, these are really horrible people, and they need to be beat. They need to be defeated. You can really cheer for the hero. Don't get me wrong. I love the gray area stuff, and I think it's really clever that, because I think in the real world, there is all different levels of everything. There's all different levels of goodness, straight on through to the really horrible, and everything in between. So when comics and media in general embody that, I like that. But in this story, it's pretty cut and dry. Who's what. And it's really the normal people that get caught in the middle versus of the two extremes. So that was something that I really enjoyed about this story. Now, imagine being the judge. I mean, basically, it's assumed here the judge is just going to give up their kid, right? If they want to keep their youngest kid.
Yeah, give up the oldest kid if you want to keep the youngest kid. Now, that is right there got to be one of, if not the worst choices a parent could have to make. How do you pick, do you pick one kid? Because, if you say no, what he's going to do, he's going to take both your kids. So do you give up one kid to save the other one, or what's your game plan? What's your avenue of attack? It's beautiful, wonderful penguin just viciousness that is, again, I hate saying how much I love this villain, but this is just an amazing, wonderfully nasty, disgusting creature that just, you want to just, I kept reading the character and kept reading the lines and kind of picturing just a little bit of the twist and the sickness in his voice compared to like the sweeter, smarmy, hey, how you doing, that we saw him before. I can hear the little voice inflections, changing from just the, okay, now let me drop the good guy attitude and kick it a little bit darker. Let's show what the penguin, and it was just like, as I'm reading this stuff, I was kind of creeping myself out at how deep I was going into understanding the penguin.
Well, the two birds with one stone there is where, you see him multitasking. He's basically using the eldest daughter as a way to pay off the birthday boy to accomplish what he wants with Weaver, while at the same time getting Judge Patterson to take care of Jessica Dent to, again, just control two different situations. He asked Patterson to already do this. Patterson didn't do it. Fine. We're using your oldest daughter for another task of mine, and, if you don't like that, your youngest is next. That's a control that he has in this world. It's creepy as can be.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it's one of the things I was sitting there as it was going through, he's eating the food and he's just tearing into the food. And it's kind of weird. When I first read it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But this week I had a very odd experience where I got to see a turkey vulture, deal with a robin. And just watching the thing pick away at the bird, and it was one of those crazy, weird situations. I couldn't walk away. It was happening right outside my office building where I work, and in a way, it was just this sick and weird. It was just twisted. But I kept going back to that scene of Cobblepot eating, and I'm just watching this bird do what it does. It's a scavenger bird, so it's what it's going to do. And I was just like, it was a fascinating moment that I was like, and it kept going back to the scene for me. Just again, this regular flat page really had a physical life to it.
Now, when we see Bruce with Alfred. And I'm skipping over the Harvey and Gordon bits because we're going to go back to that in a second. But when we see Bruce with Alfred after the lighter's been found, we see this moment where, he wants to know, where did you find this? Alfred's really ready to say, look at how beat up you just got. I had to bring you home in the car. You aren't ready for this yet. He's testing him right in this moment. Alfred's hitting him with everything he's got. You've never been in a war. I have. You don't understand that, you can't hold back. You're saying no guns. You've got no recon, no tactics, just a costume. The cape's useless. He's telling him everything he needs to know. He's teaching him in this mode. It's a very hard lesson, but you aren't willing to, go to the places that your enemies are going to go. And you see Bruce sweep out the bad leg, and, he's ready to start apologizing, but then, hey, I will do everything I have to, and I'll do it myself. And Alfred's like, in that moment, I was a little smirk there. Maybe he is a little ready. I loved everything about that moment because of how it played out. Talk about great pacing.
Yeah. Oh, multiple page spread, those cool, the full cool pages that were just telling this fight sequence. And I really dig the mental attack that Alfred was going on against Bruce. It's one thing to beat up Bruce, but you got to get him thinking differently. You got to get the warrior spirit out of him. It's that kill or be killed attitude. Yeah, he's not going to cross the line. He's not going to break the code of the bat, but you need that fierceness. You need that, fight for life. Part of the thing of living a privileged life is he never really had to fight for life. He never really had to struggle. Yeah, he pushed himself. He trained. He physically practiced, and he has his training. But there's a different level between training, to martial arts training or training in fighting. Training in combat, training in war. There's different things of just that level of understanding, that level of attitude, that level of acceptance of what you have to do to get it done. And I loved seeing that Alfred's like, not only calling him on it, but pushing him to that point, getting him to that, maybe, getting him to that spot where he can actually step up and, boom, unleash.
Harvey goes down to the Hall of Records, and he's really trying to find from the cold cases anything he can about the Waynes. And this is true to Harvey. Harvey has never been one afraid to break some rules. We've seen that in, the current kind of chubby, bloated Harvey that we see in the comics. He is, the hard-edged cop who will break a few rules to accomplish his end goal. Be a little more brutal. Cross a few lines. He's still a good guy, but he's not afraid to have some wiggle room on his morality when necessary. Never goes too far, but this is a great example of where using Gordon's name to get himself the cold case files, not realizing what a horrible path he's going to set things down as Amy down in records decides to let the mayor know what's happening.
Yeah, that is funny because when I'm seeing that play out, it never even dawned on me where this was going to go, how this was going to go. I kind of was figuring out, everything going on with the corruption, but it just, for some reason, I was having a mental block. And it wasn't until we really see Gordon react, and I'm like, oh my God. And we see, when Amy calls to the mayor and Amy calls it, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. We're going to have some massive issues and massive problems here. And it was another smack in the head moment where thinking I should have known when Bullock was doing this, that this wasn't just going to be a simple, hey, you shouldn't have done that kind of moment. There was going to be some serious ramifications.
I love this moment where he shows home. Barbara's not there. She calls in, as I mentioned earlier, about the rent check bouncing. She worked an extra shift just to help out again. Gordon's horror in that moment of realizing the rent check bounced because of him and Barbara having to be kidnapped right then. It went into that whole situation. We see Bruce doing some detective work leading in. Then, when the case file shows up at his home with Bullock, the phone call comes in from Axe. Gordon just realizing the horror and terror of Bullock just screwed me over. Right in this moment, Bullock went in there, used my name. Yes, he's trying to do this great thing to set up this cold case, to set himself up in film and all this stuff. But in this moment, the real Gotham is taking control. The people, the manipulation, the underground of Gotham that really controls things has taken his daughter. And he's afraid she's going to go the path of his wife. Telling Bullock everything here. Making Bullock realizing, whoa, I really screwed up. I like this moment where Bullock's like, okay, I messed up. Let me help you. Let's do this. Let's get to Axe. Let's get the information. Let's step up here. I really started to like Bullock.
Yeah, definitely. Really was some really great Bullock moments, Bullock-Gordon moments. And I love when Gordon was explaining it to Bullock, he was so passionate, so fired. He actually had a little bit of a stuttering going on. He's like, my daughter. And it was just, because you can imagine when you get going, when you get that excitement, when you're thinking like, your brain speaking, your mouth speaking, but you're really not completely connecting the words because you're just going through. It's a pure adrenaline, pure energy, pure excitement. Going, oh, how do I save her? You can't focus. And I love seeing Harvey and him together. And it showed that there is a good guy there. It does show that Harvey is not one of the bad guys. He's not a crooked cop. Yeah, he came to Gotham for the wrong reasons, but in his soul, in his character, there is some good to him. And I'm really curious to see what happens to him in the second issue. What happens to him later on? Where are they going to go with Harvey?
Come on, X. I get it now. This is Gotham City. It's bad cop, bad cop. I loved that sequence because this is a very, very dark city. And in this moment, Axe is not going to, there is no way to talk Axe through the information they need. They're after Gordon's daughter. Normally in this moment, I'd be sitting there saying, oh, should they really cross this line or anything like that? In this case, absolutely. You're dealing in a very corrupt world where a daughter is going to be possibly killed. Not possibly killed. They know she's going to die unless they do something immediately because there's been too much history of that happening in Gotham. That's how it is so corrupt. And these two get the information that they're going for in that moment.
Yeah, that was going to be a beatdown. And I love the look on Bullock and Gordon's face. Bullock's got the bat, Gordon's got a crowbar, and Axe has got the hey guys, we're done talking. No more, no more nice guy here. It's time for a beatdown. You're going to give us the information after we smack you around a little bit. If you don't tell us, we'll keep hitting you. I love that feeling, and I loved actually what they end up doing with Axe.
Yeah, I did too, with putting him in the trunk and everything.
Lock him in the trunk.
At the crime scene with the rust, I love that led Batman after Birthday Boy to Arkham. I love there's two different reasons why Gordon and Bullock are going to arrive at Arkham, and Batman is going to arrive at Arkham. They're exploring the case in two different ways, going there for two different reasons. Batman's after Cobblepot. Batman's after anything that's going to link him to the death of his parents, while they're after something else. Now, when they do this close-up of Bruce's realization that it is Arkham from the rust, you take a look at this detail of the mask, and you see the stitching. I adored that. You did the detail on the eye, amazing. The detail on the stitching, the detail of the crinkled nose. It just goes to show, again, we're dealing with a cloth that has been sewn together, adding another real-world level to all this.
Well, I like the fact that Alfred gave him grief over the fact that he didn't have planning or recon.
Yeah.
So we're seeing Bruce learn from his past mistakes. He's going the detective route. He's looking into it. He's not just diving into this halfway. He's actually going to come up with a game plan, come up with a strategy. I thought that was a cool, again, nice growth of Batman.
I like Barbara's attempted escape.
Yeah.
It just shows a strength, even though it wasn't going to work out for her. I just love that there was, breaking through the chair. There was an attempt at an escape. She didn't just settle for that. Is he wearing a hat that says that he's 6 today?
Yeah. He's a bit freaky, and he's this massive mountain of a man. And I was like, holy crud! And the fact that Barbara can see that and then still fights on is again another statement of character. And I kind of cheered. Even before we knew her possible path down to Batgirl, I was like, that's Batgirl right there. All right. She's got to have the fight in her, and I really like seeing that.
When he's walking through Arkham, I love that he's taking a look at the pictures on the wall and seeing his mother looking sad. Like, she does not look happy in that picture at all. So what horrors did she go through as a child that would make her that way in a picture? Because the age there, she should be happy. She's a kid, and she's clearly not. So she's been through something horrid. That's a story I really want to know when you see pictures like that. And he wants to know. Bad things happen here. What are those bad things?
Yeah, that Arkham, that house, man. And then they show the map on the wall where it's like everything in the city was laid out leading towards with the Arkham as if it was Arkham's at the center of town. And there's so much more to that story that I hope we get more glimpses of it. I hope we get more understanding behind the Arkham, behind everything that happened. We may not get an Arkham Asylum, but Arkham's not done yet. Arkham is very much a part of the craziness that is Gotham. And I like seeing the fact that this is, boom, right there. It's in the forefront. It still is a element and is part of the energy and the life force that is Gotham City.
Gordon, I like that. I know how you are with calling for backup.
Yeah.
Tell me Gordon's justification for not in this case isn't awesome.
Oh, yeah. No issue whatsoever with how they handled it. They had to move fast. They had to move right then and there. Any delays would have caused the death. I was completely behind it. Plus, you add to the personal element of it. This isn't just a perp. This isn't just a victim. This is his daughter. He's not going to hold back. He's not going to wait for backup. He's going to move in right away. This is it. It's go time. It
isn't just the necessity for speed there, dude. It's also the fact that he can't trust the other cops because he says, so we can what? Have them tell the mayor we're here? Have them warn this killer? I'm not waiting for anything. He knows they're on the take.
Yeah.
So he knows if they call it in, they're doomed to fail. This is the only chance that he has. Bullock's like, okay, hey, I'm with you here, buddy. I'm on your side. He's like, no, dude, you caused all this. And I love that that's not forgotten because of the whole crowbar baseball bat incident.
Yeah, they're still going to have to work through that. Even as this story plays out, there's still going to be there's a trust with Harvey now. There's a camaraderie, and I'm curious to see what the relationship is going to be like in the second part. But there's always going to be that little bit of Harvey, you were a dumbass. You almost got my daughter killed. So there's always going to be that level in their relationship.
I love that when they're exploring the house and with how maze-like the house is, that immediately one of them moving ahead of the other is going to mean that they're going to get separated pretty fast. And trying to find each other is not going to be an easy thing. We see Gordon's second confrontation, arguably his first real confrontation with Batman, where the two of them are talking, and his assumption that, like, hey, I don't know if you're a good guy or a bad guy. I'm going to assume you're a part of all this. You're here. I'm here. What are you doing here? What did you do with my daughter? Realizing this guy doesn't know anything about it, and Gordon's still throwing punches, the two of them come to this, like, convenient realization because of the events around them that, hey, we need to stop. We need to listen. We need to find where this birthday boy guy is.
And again, it's Barbara fighting back. It's Barbara yelling that kind of helps, one, snap them out of it, but also helps them find her. And it's, again, statement of character for Barbara, that she's not just going to sit there, cower, and, curl up in a ball and just wait for death to happen. She's going to do whatever she can to survive. She's going to fight. She's going to hold on to life. And I loved, the fact that, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Yeah, this house is a maze. You don't know your way around it. Well, I hear the noise on the other end of this wall. I'm going through it. I loved seeing just the burst through the wall and just, again, bam, on the scene. This is the Batman.
I like the little detail before that with Harvey, where Harvey explores that child's bedroom.
Yeah.
Which could have even been originally Bruce's mother's. But, it's obviously been converted into a room for birthday boy or whatever. You'll all go crazy. He's pulling up one of the blocks, and out of the corner of his eye, that instant reaction, it shows that he does have some skills. Just out of the corner of his eye, he sees something move, which was just himself in the mirror. But I liked that. I liked the response time and things like that, because it reminds us that, okay, for as soft as he might be because of the whole television thing, the guy does have skills.
Oh, yeah. He is a cop. He's not just, I call him an actor, but he is a cop. And that was kind of neat to see him throw down there. And then even later on with the birthday boy, where he tries to fight, this, again, you got this monster of a guy, and he's going at him. He's fighting. He's throwing down. Because it's the right thing to do. You got to take down the bad guy.
When they burst through the floor, and Bullock, like you said, is fighting in there, and it leads to Bullock eventually getting shoved through the floor himself and seeing the horrors of what happened down below, and just how many kids were fed to Birthday Boy. It's this idea of true evil, and I love that it was designated in this as true evil. Sometimes when you read these stories, it's really important to understand the difference between good and evil. And when something's evil, you should root for the good guys. You should root for evil to be brought down, because there is evil in the world. I love superhero stories that remind us that evil needs to be stomped out, and that we should all strive for a world where eventually we get away from there being evil. And that's something I really liked about this story, because it's a distinction from sometimes gray area storytelling, which I love. I'm not knocking any of that. I think sometimes you need a good tried and true good guy versus bad guy story that's told in there as well. And this really worked for me because of that.
Yeah, the notion of true evil is kind of it's an interesting concept, because it's what is evil when you start looking at the punishing criminals. What's the punishment fits the crime. Well, where are we at? What's the level? What are we dealing with here? This guy, he is, people will argue he's sick in the head. He's unfit. He's not mentally able to stand trial. He's unaware of his reaction. He butchered little children. Yeah. And for me, that right there is the top of the evil list. And just how he then, after butchering them, just discarded the bodies. And it wasn't even like, giving them a burial or dealing it just just throw them this way, just get rid of them. And it was just the callousness and just there was so many different things I was like just reacting to, in this story. And it is just a story. It's not like this is real, but it still hits you home. It still does trigger stuff in your mind. And I think that, again, seeing it through Harvey's eyes, seeing just the panic, seeing the terror that he had. They didn't need to show the decaying children to know exactly what he was doing. They didn't need Harvey to comment on the smell for me to know that was just some god-awful, horrific smell going on down there, because rotting human flesh smells really nasty and really disgusting. You didn't need to have someone tell you that he smelled something putrid. You just know, just from what you're seeing, just from what you're getting from there. I think that, again, it's the beauty of the horror, the beauty of just the moment that it's this absolutely horrific thing that you just can't help but say, whoa, that's awesome.
That's one of the things that I think is really great in all this is what you don't see, what they don't say. I think it's important sometimes to leave things to the imagination, just walk away from that, because sometimes that's even more horrifying. I've referenced Hitchcock a lot of times on the show, and one of the reasons why I've always loved his films so much is there's been a number of his movies where you show just enough, then you move along, sometimes just showing the silent reaction or very limited reaction of, the sheer horror of the person involved, like in this case Harvey, really works so much better at making your mind do the work. I love that he needed Batman to save him.
Yeah.
He was trapped because the stairs were broken out, handcuffs in there, and them having these two moments where you see so many of those poor girls. What did I just see? Just knowing that this is something Harvey will never be the same from. His demeanor, his hair, everything. Look, it's disheveled now. He goes to call it in. You just see that this is a man who will never again be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's he's no longer pretty boy, Bullock. It's a sad moment to see, because before he did have his act together, before he did have something, and I hate seeing something such horrific happen to such a person, but it's one of those like whoa kind of moments that really just tells the story and gets me excited for part 2, because I want to see what that Harvey's like.
Yeah, I think one of the messages I got from this story is, as a society, it's important for us to, if you see things that are a little out of whack, see somebody that's in trouble, that's when you call the police. You do these things. You don't ignore situations. Like when Batman closed his eyes and kind of, didn't look at what was happening in that shop. I think that's probably a more common occurrence than we all realize. When nowadays it's so easy to flip the phone and dial 911, and do that little thing to help out. If somebody's hurt, doing that 911, somebody's trapped at the side of the road, dial the people that can help. You don't even really have to do anything to get involved other than to make the quick phone call. Nowadays, we all have, or almost everybody has, a cell phone option. It's really easy to do something to help out with minimal involvement in those situations. I think that was something that I really caught from those early moments from Bruce, was he could have done something there and he chose not to. And I think that causes a change in him later in the story, where he realizes he should have and he can do more. I like seeing the situation with Gordon and Barbara.
Yeah.
At the end, he's apologizing to her. And again, you see the strength of her. Will you stop always saying that? This isn't your fault. This is this world. I love that Mom is something that they both embrace. She is the representation of that family, of what the light that Mom brought into his world.
Yeah, and it's, again, we talked earlier about the strength of Barbara. We're seeing it right there, where she's not letting him go down, the pity road. He's not like, hey, it's not your fault. Come on. And it's, again, the birth of Batgirl. Why she would want to fight back. Why she would want to be the hero. It's not just because Batman saved her life. It's because this world does need people to stand up. This world does need a Batman. It does need a Batgirl. And I like the fact that, it's not just about the adventure or thrill seeking. It's about doing what's right and doing what she can. And I'm assuming we're going to get more stories of her, more adventures, more development of her, in the volume 2. But if not, I'm already developing it in my head, and I'm already seeing this happen.
Now, when Cobblepot and Batman eventually have their meeting, and we see the umbrella used, he's never called the Penguin.
No.
We just know that Cobblepot's the Penguin. I like that. It's kind of like in Dark Knight Rises, Catwoman's never defined as Catwoman. I like that. It was something in this. It didn't make any sense. There was no need for him to be defined as a Penguin. He's, quote unquote mayor, quote unquote legit. Why would he have a name like that? Alfred shows up on the scene, and there's this discussion of predators and prey and survivors. I love that Penguin's got like the umbrella to Bruce's throat, and he's ready to throw out the threat move, and Alfred doesn't even wait. Bam! I thought that was. It's not something Batman would do. I love that it was Alfred that did it, because I actually would have been. I don't know if I would have been disappointed if Batman did it, because I think there's a certain amount where you can go that was justified. But it kind of kept Batman in this no killing, no guns mode that I think he should stay in. And with Alfred's background, I had zero issue with he being the one to do it. And kind of buying into the whole thing now. Like, these two have had major confrontations of philosophy during all this. And I think Alfred's starting to see that some of what he's said to Bruce has rubbed off. And some of what Bruce has been saying to him has rubbed off at Alfred. These are two people that have become comrades through a shared experience here. Similar to what happened with his dad and him.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Alfred shot first. So we have no Han Solo debate going on here, and I love that. I normally have issues with rogues being killed off and villains being killed off. None whatsoever with this. I thought this was an absolutely cool sequence. I cheered and I laughed and I howled. I thought it was just a great part of just these characters and two kinds of people in Gotham: predators and preys. Actually, there's a third kind: survivors. Bam! Blasts them out the window. I love just that visual, just that sound. I can hear the shotgun being shucked and get the round ready. I hear, you see the blast and flying out the window. And it was just again, we're dealing with paper, and I'm still seeing the stuff in my head. I'm hearing the sounds. I'm hearing the explosions. I'm hearing the crashes. It completely pulled me in, and it was something that I was like, yes, all right, that's cool. I dig this.
Now, I wonder who was the member of the Gotham City Police Department that claimed that Batman was responsible for the capture of Birthday Boy and the death of Cobblepot. Was that Bullock or Gordon?
I think that was Gordon, because I think Bullock's now staying out of the limelight. Bullock's done. Bullock doesn't want to talk to anybody. Bullock wants nothing to do with the press. He showed up in Gotham wanting to be, hey, look at me. Now he's seen its underbelly, and he doesn't want any part of it. He just wants to forget.
Lucius Fox working on Batarangs. I love that you're seeing him measure things, trying to make them aerodynamic, stuff like that. That was really cool. Seeing the resolution with the dents, where Jessica becomes the new mayor after everything that's happened. Everything looking bright and cheerful for Gotham. We see Gordon come in with Axe. That was one of my favorite sequences in the whole thing. What are you doing? What am I doing? He's under arrest. You can't arrest him. Why not? Who else says he can't be arrested? Who else is going to let this city be owned by the criminal scum that preys off it? Who else is a damn coward? Not me, not anymore. Just the power of that moment, the look on his face, and someone needs to wash my trunk out. Who is that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's Jim Gordon there, baby.
Yeah.
That is our Jim Gordon. And I was like, yes!
What a terrific, terrific story that was told there. I love the drawings that Barbara did. I love Bullock. Bullock, by now, we see the stubble, the disheveled hair, the tie that's not quite done up all the way to the top. It's basically Bullock's uniform that we know him to have. At the, basically at the liquor store, seeing what led him to that. I love that we see that there's some horror that led Bullock to be the man that we knew him to be in the comics.
Yeah, you hate to see the guy go down the path, and I hope he's able to rebound a little bit from it. But yeah, just the direction they went with him, how he got there was something I was like, oh dang, that's cool. That is a really neat story element.
The whole closing with Alfred and Bruce, Bruce, you'll never be alone. And Bruce, he's like, you want to fix this city? Fine. But you were lucky this time. Batman's not everything the press thinks he is. Then we need to build a better Batman. More than that, we need to build a legend. I loved at the end seeing him swoop in with the criminals who were ripping off that store. A real sharp contrast to what happened early on in the beginning where that type of thing was ignored. Now we're seeing Batman take action with that. They're building a legend that's going to clean up the streets of Gotham. What a great way to end off the issue, because it goes back and reminds us what happened in the beginning, shows us how this man has grown and evolved from where he was in the beginning. And take a look at the utility belt. It's different. The utility belt's more advanced now than it was early on. So he's already started to build a better Batman in that we're using a little bit more technologically advanced utility belt, something that's probably crafted, with the cooperation of Lucius Fox. I just really loved, and this is the evolution you were talking about earlier in the issue, what you hope to see in the next one. I think right now we're starting to see the groundwork laid out for that. Really, really liked this. This was on my short list of Batman stories now, because I read this 4 times in a row. Each time I got more and more excited from it. I noticed more things than I noticed, the first few times through. Didn't read it because I had to. Read it because I just genuinely enjoyed this experience. And the final teaser at the end, who is Batman? What a riddle.
Riddle me this, man. You know what? I'm really looking forward to that because I want to see Earth 1 Riddler. I want to see where he goes with this. And again, they could very easily have gone with Joker. They could have gone with a playing card Joker, or shown, the final scene could have been like a card, at a chemical plant, or done something like that just to tease the Joker. But the fact that they went with the Riddler, really, I was like, all right, we're going to get some cool stuff. This is, again, they're thinking long term with this series. I don't think Volume 2 is going to be the end of the series. I think we're going to go through. And I'm hoping we go through all the rogues. I'm hoping we get to see the Joker, and we get to see Harvey, Two-Face. We get to see, just his rogues characters and see how he deals with them.
I'd also like to see more original characters like Birthday Boy.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I really found refreshing is that, yes, we did the Penguin, which was great. I loved the handling of the Penguin in this. But I also thought that there was room for this brand new character. I think it's great to, create a mythos where you've got unique characters that you haven't seen before for Batman. So I'm not contradicting you. I agree 100% with you. But I want to also add how much I really enjoyed that kind of criminal element being added into this that was just slightly different. It definitely fits Batman. It's a Batman villain. Batman-style villain, but it adds another rogue to the rogues gallery, and I'd love to see more of that type of character. I think it's no accident that Birthday Boy survived.
Yeah. Oh, I think we'll see him again, or just maybe reference to him, or maybe another occurrence or dealings with him.
See him with the Joker down the road.
Oh.
Why wouldn't the Joker use that guy as a thug?
Oh, God, yeah. I could definitely see the little mind games there, or who knows, maybe the Riddler will do something like that.
Yeah. Great story.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Once again, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, remember to check out this week all of the amazing deals for August from DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com, check out that 60% sale on DC hardcovers and trades. They have select hardcovers and trades at 60% off. Also, make sure to check out, if you haven't been reading it, or if you want to get it in that wonderful hardcover edition, Action Comics 1 through 8 in the first Action Comics hardcover. $24.99 regularly, 50% off, only $12.50. On our next episode, we will be having voicemails again. I just came back from vacation, so I didn't really have time to record voicemails for this particular episode because I wanted to get it out to you in a timely fashion. So next week, our show voicemails will be returning. If you want to add any voicemails to our show voicemail line, it's 1-440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype, and we love having you part of the show. I also want to shout out our show's Facebook group. We have a wonderful and active Facebook group. We also have a Twitter account. We also have an account on Google+. So make sure to feel free to add yourself to any of those accounts, whichever your preference is. I want to thank everybody who's part of our wonderful community because we rely heavily on you. You keep those discussions going and you participate when the show's done and over with. You guys keep that going, and it really means a lot to us, so thank you so much. Jim, our next episode is going to be Before Watchmen. We're going to be discussing a bunch of Before Watchmen books, basically everything that's been released so far. So it's going to be a pretty heavy-duty episode strictly on Before Watchmen. I'm excited for this because I've been really enjoying that event. So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on it. I've been curious to discuss what some of our favorite books have been out of the batch. Do we have a favorite of them? What makes that book stand out over the others? Because I think it's been a really exceptional series of books. So I'm excited to talk about that next week. We will see you then.
Bye.
Space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan. What you do to me, Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. Hawkman.